He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming live on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. And we are broadcasting live right now at the Boston Public Library. From noon to a little bit past 1, we're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey. She's going to be right here at the library for another session of Ask the Governor. You can call or text us, or you can come on down to the Boston Public Library and ask her a question yourself.
That's right. That's 12 to 1, and then 2 and after the monsoon arrives. Hi, Marjorie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm thinking I made a big mistake, Jim.
Why is that?
I should have become a state trooper or got a job at UMass.
We're going to start the show with a question. How many of you in the audience at the library know who Frank Martin is? Can you raise your hand if you know who Frank Martin is? Oh, my God. Not one single person.
Not one person, no.
Well, Marjorie, put your hand down.
Okay.
According to the Boston Globe's recent review of state employees, like an hour ago, he's the top earner in Massachusetts. He's the UMass head basketball coach, raking in $1.6 million in 2023. The salary, by the way, was $700,000 the year before. And the team's record, a less than stellar 15-16. The UMass system accounts for the top 22 highest earners. Michael Collins, you know who he is, Marjorie?
Is some kind of athletic coach, right?
No, he's the chancellor.
He's the chancellor.
$1.4 million. The 1-11 football coach, meaning 1 win and 11 losses, makes a mere $831,000. You know how much Healy makes, by the way? Less than $300,000.
I know.
The governor makes less than $300,000. The football coach makes $831,000. And the reason we're doing this is not so much just to talk about in the abstract, but this comes out the day after the governor said she was mandated to cut more than $350 million from the budget, including health programs, a lot of local nonprofits. So we want to get your reaction to the priorities of this kind of spending at 877-301-8970.
You know what's incredible? I'm looking, and it's difficult to be a police officer. Everybody knows that. But I'm up to 30 state police officers who are over $300,000.
That's overtime stuff.
That's overtime, but that's still taxpayer dollars. So that's a lot of money. And you know, I'm counting the number of chancellors. Do you know what a chancellor does, Jim?
Yes, I do.
What do they do?
He makes $1.4 million.
Well, you're looking.
That's what he does.
You're looking. I got 1 chancellor, 2 chancellors, 3 chancellors, 4 chancellors, 5 chancellors.
There's probably a chancellor of each campus.
Yeah, there's many chancellors. You know, I feel bad for the president of Frederick Clark down at Bridgewater State University. He's getting screwed here.
How much he make?
He's only making $300,000. You know, he's like small.
By the way, in all
potatoes.
fairness, people are going to call and say the highest paid employee in virtually every state, and this happens to be true, is the football or basketball coach at whether it's Duke or Alabama. This is not North Carolina or Alabama.
Well, here's the question.
Football and basketball, UMass, I hope they do well, is just not that important to be making $1.6 million or $800,000 if you're the football coach.
Well, I guess the question is, how much money do they make for the school? I mean, we all know that...
no, it's not.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that.
I think that matters.
How much money they make.
I think that matters.
If you think a lot of people are going to the 1-11 football team?
I think we can look right up there in Chestnut Hill and look at what Doug Flutie did for Boston College. I mean, they had an unbelievably fantastic win. Are you kidding?
It was one of the greatest victories and eras in the history of college
basketball. And Boston College used to be a commuter school. Almost anybody could get into Boston College. If you played CYO basketball, you were right in there. Now,
what was your favorite game this year on the UMass schedule? What's the one that you really...
My point is, if you are making big bucks for the college like they are...
You think they're making big bucks?
No, I don't. I mean, isn't the football team really struggling?
1-11.
1-11. So I would say they're not making big bucks. Look at Gillette the other day. There was hardly anybody in Gillette.
Well, that has nothing... What does that got to do with this?
It just says
it was
if you're not a
crappy day. It was a snowstorm.
You know, Jim...
What?
If you're not a good team, people don't go watch you.
I know that.
That means you don't make a lot of money for the school. So that's the point. Alabama, Michigan, those places, they make tons of money for the school.
Good,
This is a different kind of a situation.
Yeah, 877-301-8970. How many cops on the list again?
Well, I'm still counting. I'm up to about 30 at this point that are over $300,000. That's a lot of
more than the governor.
Yeah, that's a lot of overtime over there. And the other thing is we all know, police officers are in that category 4 where you can retire, I think at 50 or 55. And, you know, that's not a bad situation. You retire, make $300,000 for like 25 years or 30 years, then you retire and get a pension at 55. That's great.
Do you think anybody cares about this except us?
I hope so, because it's a lot of the reason why UMass is so expensive. I mean, you know what? It's a state school. To me, I don't think we'll ask the governor when she gets here.
Yeah.
I don't think you can justify those kind of salaries at a state school. If Harvard wants to charge that kind of money, they get a huge endowment. It's different. And by the way, our staff just found that Harvard President Lawrence S. Backout earned more than $1.3 million in 2021. UPenn President Amy Gutman made just under $3.4 million in 2021. What is the president of UMass making, Jim?
I think he's making less than $1 million a year,
Yeah.
but that's not the issue. The basketball coach at UMass is making more than Larry Backup made at a private university to be president of Harvard.
Yeah. Well, again, I get back to the point you keep ridiculing.
What is it?
If those teams made mega bucks for the school, Boston College has been transformed, and it's because of sports.
How much money is the chancellor, $1.4 million Michael Collins, making for the school, Marjorie?
I would say he's probably not making a lot of money. But he's just one of many chancellors.
Yeah.
It's a Chancellor Araba up there. At UMass. I don't know what they do, but you think about jobs, you want to have to be able to afford a house in Massachusetts, I would say state cops or UMass. That's the way to go.
877-301-8970. We're begging you to say that you agree with us because we don't want to be alone on this issue. 877-301-8970.
Okay, 877-301-8970. Michael
Oops,
from
the YouTube live stream is not working at the moment.
Oh, no.
But I'm sure it will be working soon, so be patient. 877.
Was that a texter?
What?
That added, hope nobody gets locked in the bathroom
actually, that's a
today?
note to us that you shouldn't read on the air. Okay. Thank you for that,
Because we had
Marjorie.
somebody getting locked in the bathroom the
Not
other
somebody.
day.
That was Jamie who got locked. Hi, Jamie. Raise your hand
Hi,
for those
Jamie.
who don't know. There he is.
We're sorry you got locked in the bathroom
for 4 hours.
Thank God you had your
How many people in the
phone.
audience, no one knew who Frank Martin was. How many of you have been locked in a bathroom for 4 more hours in the last, month? Anybody? Nobody. Okay. Jamie, raise your hand. Thank you very much. 877-301-8970. We're talking about these salaries. And again, it comes in the context of the governor yesterday being put in a position where she had to cut close to $400 million from this year's budget, which we'll obviously talk to her about at noon. Michael in Cambridge, welcome to the show. You're first. Michael.
Hi, Michael. Are you there?
Good start. Okay, Michael, we'll put you on hold. We'll get back to you in a second. 877-301-8970.
Now here's an interesting suggestion from one of the texters. The UMass football coach should receive a base salary of $200,000 and an incentive of $100,000 per win. In the 2023 season, he would have made $300,000 instead of $800,000.
Why did he make
thus
it? I don't
saving
get
the
it.
state $500,000 because he didn't win any games.
No, but why was he made? Was the salary, you said $200,000 with an incentive?
This is a suggestion from a texter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. The coach starts at $200,000, and every time he wins, he gets $100,000, and that would have saved the state a lot of money because he wouldn't have gotten what did he get?
$831,000, but who's counting?
But the basketball team is doing better up there at UMass.
Didn't Dan Shaughnessy write a piece saying that UMass moving to the highest division, I think it's 1A, was a mistake? That's not where UMass should be. They should drop down to division, whatever it is, 1AA or something. And obviously, there'd be less of a demand to have a coach who's making an exorbitant amount of money.
What happened to the hockey coach? One of the texters wants to know, where's the hockey coach?
That's a very good question.
I guess they didn't make it to
who didn't make it to the top 200 either in the Globe list today?
Who?
The women's basketball coach. Men's basketball coach, 1-6. Women's didn't make the list. John in the car, you're next on Boylston Public Radio. Welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you want to let us know?
When it comes to the police who make so much money on overtime, a lot of that, if it is detail, the town is actually billing the contractor, et cetera, an amount that's actually higher than what they're paying the police officer. So all those state police officers you see at, say, Gillette Stadium for the football game, they're on detail. They actually are paid by the state, but then the state bills Gillette Stadium.
Well, I don't know about
I'm
that.
not sure.
Make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's true.
Now,
in
the
every,
other time,
I'm not sure if that's true in every case, John. I'm really not sure that that's true. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's the way it used to be, but you know how things are, and some of their overtime is not covered by details.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true. John, it's a very good point. John, thank you very much for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. By the way, the issue goes beyond...
This is the Massachusetts state payroll.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, but there may be
correct.
a reimbursement. He may be right. There may be some level of reimbursement to the state from private entities that use a cop on detail. But he also made an important point as he was hanging up. Overtime is not all detail work. Overtime is often overtime because they're short staffing or that sort of thing.
The Globe every year does the highest paid police officers in Boston, and there's usually about 30 of them. They're making over $300,000. It's a combination of salary, detail, and overtime. But there's a difference between obviously details and overtime. By the way, one of the agreements that Mayor Wu got in the Boston Police Department, if the cops don't want those details, they are allowed now to go to other people that might want them, including civilians who might want those details.
You know, part of the defense, I would assume, if Marty Meehan, who's the president of UMass, were here today, we haven't talked to him in a few years, we should have him on, is you got to pay what you got to pay in the market to get who you want, a high-quality person. Well, the voters in Massachusetts thought we got a pretty high-quality person for governor, and the prior governor was making $185,000, Charlie Baker. Most people thought actually he was the most popular governor in America. We got him for $185,000. The assumption is you might be able to get a decent basketball coach, maybe for $285,000 rather than $1.6 million. I just don't. I really don't get this, and it also sends a horrible message.
It's a public school.
It's a horrible message.
Yeah,
really
and that's the difference. Like I said before, it's not Harvard, it's not Stanford, it's not Yale. It's a public school. What?
One of our colleagues got us an excerpt from Dan Shaughnessy's Globe's column on the UMass football team in 2019. UMass's football program is an embarrassment. This is not the fault of the student athletes. It is the fault of the UMass administration, the athletic department. Players are not being put in a position to succeed. That's on the grown-ups and the citizens of Massachusetts who are letting this happen. Simply put, the Minutemen should not be playing big-time college football. They lose by whopping scores. And I repeat, for the 14th time, the coach is making $831,000 for that football program. That is an embarrassment, according to Dan.
Remember when Marty Meehan ran for Congress? His big deal was term limits.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he decided, like a lot of Congress people did when his term was up, that he, maybe term limits wasn't such a big deal. My question to Marty Meehan would be, why'd you wait so long? You could have gone to UMass years ago. He's already making $800,000. So can imagine what his pension is going to be when he retires. Unbelievable opportunity. We should all think of that. Tell your children, I'm telling you, state cops and UMass. Joy from Barrington.
Or become a chancellor. I mean,
or chancellor. Well, they're UMass
chancellors, right? That's what your kid should be doing, is going to chancellor school.
Was I say, I'm waiting for somebody to tell us what chancellor school. I don't know, but there's at least 6 of them up there doing something at UMass. Joy from Barrington, thank you for calling.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I just wanted to say that there is has to be some remuneration, because I know from living in other states when this same issue has come up, and I think the last time it was in New Hampshire, is that the athletic programs are heavily funded by alumni and wealthy parent contributors. And so, therefore, they often will even have a say in the recruitment and placement of coaches. And so, just like I think Jim just said, is you got to be willing to pay for the quality you want.
No, I said the opposite, actually. I said if you can get a pretty good governor, and obviously a huge percentage of the voters thought Maura Healey would be a pretty good governor. They all love Charlie Baker. One made $185,000. The next one's making $222,000. If you can get a pretty good chief executive for the whole state for less than $250,000, you should probably be able to get a basketball coach for less than $1.6 million. And Jory, even if you're right, if this money is supplemented for the coaches of the teams, this is the amount of money in the Globe list out of the state payroll.
Right.
This is state money. This is not alumni add-on. Maybe the guy, I have no idea what the law or the rules are, he may make even more with whatever alumni contributions there are. Jory, thanks for your call, though. We appreciate it.
And listen to this. Almost 18% of the state payroll went to the UMass system. The MBTA is second. I mean, that's really kind of shocking,
I'm
isn't
not
it?
troubled by UMass getting the most money in the slightest. depending on what they do with it. I want the UMass higher education system to be the highest quality public college in the country.
I think that maybe we could tighten our belts a little bit at UMass so we get the MBTA to work so that people can get back and forth to their jobs, and so Boston doesn't lose its economic hub ability here because people can't get to work and the traffic is so terrible. To me, the MBTA
it's number two.
Yeah, it's number two.
Pretty high.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
You're asking the wrong questions.
I am.
We take calls. I'm going to tell you right now. We take calls in order.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take any call out of order for somebody who graduated from Chancellor School. Because Margie and I should have done our research before the show. What do those chancellors make? $1.4 million for the head chancellor, Michael Collins. What do the other ones make?
Well, we got the second one comes in at, we've had him on the show, Jim.
Who?
He's from UMass Boston.
Oh, we love him.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I mean,
he's making $600,000. Next time he comes, we're asking him to take us out for lunch. There's no question about that.
Right?
Yeah. And the executive vice chancellor, he's the vice chancellor. He's coming in at a mere $527,000.
Okay. We'll have him on the show.
We got a bunch of them at $500,000. Chancellor. Yep. We go right down the list. Chancellors are all above $500,000. Maybe there's a few laggards at $400,000, but most of them are up at $500,000.
So we got to take a break. When the lines are full, when a line opens, if you call in, if you're a graduate of Chancellor School, you tell the call screener, I don't know who's doing it today, you tell him or her that you're a Chancellor graduate, and we will put you at the top of the list so we can talk to you.
May I just say one thing?
You may say whatever
before we go to break.
Please.
You can't run daycares because you can't pay the teachers enough money so they can afford even to take the tea, which doesn't make as much money as UMass. You know what I mean?
What are you talking about? They're making like $35,000 to take care of your kids. That's not enough? That's plenty.
$35,000. You know what their big mistake was?
What? Not to go to Chancellor School.
Absolutely. We're talking about the salaries of our public college, UMass, the UMass system. What do you think? It's a little bit too much money. Could we maybe tighten our belts just a little bit and spread around the taxpayer dollars here in Massachusetts? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and YouTube is fixed. We're happy to report. We are now broadcasting back live at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. In 40 minutes, the governor, Maura Healey, will be here for an hour of Ask the Governor. You can call her, text her, or you can just come and ask from the mic that's about 20 feet away from where she'll be standing. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Chancellor School and people who have decided, we don't know what it is, but we know it's a good line of work.
Good line of work,
Apparently,
absolutely.
there are a lot of chancellors, one of whom we know and actually we like immensely, and I think he's
a
really
great guy.
talented over at UMass Boston. They seem to be making a lot of money, and there are a lot of them. This is based on the Globe published today, the top 200 wage earners in Massachusetts. The vast majority at the top are all people at UMass. And by the way, the vast majority of those UMass people are not teaching courses, correct?
Well, the professors are doing pretty well,
They
too.
are?
Yeah, $4 400,000, 500,000, 413,000, 411,000. Yeah, the professors are doing really well.
Not as well as the chancellor school graduates.
Not as well as the chancellor school graduates, but they're aspiring chancellors. No question about it. And we were just talking about the MBTA. I mean, talk about the worst job in the world. I can't believe that the Ted Lasso of state employees, Philip Eng, is so upbeat all the time. He's trying to do I think, a good job at the T. He's making $313,000. That's a very good salary. I'm not saying it's not, but something seems out of whack when you can be a professor making $400,000 and $500,000. Do you get that money when you're on a sabbatical as well? I don't know.
I know.
Well, it's a great job in many ways.
Yeah.
The hours aren't bad. The time off is not bad. The sabbatical opportunities aren't bad. I don't know. I think things are a little out of hand up there at UMass. Paul from Marblehead. What do you think, Paul?
Hey, Paul.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I love the show. Thanks for taking the call.
Thank you.
I think my son's a freshman at UMass.
Oh.
I think they've been doing a great job with the school. Its educational reputation has gone up very high. I trust the people that are running it to say, hey, what can we do to raise the profile and get more out-of-state people? In the state, people love it. Out-of-state, it doesn't have as high a profile. And bringing in someone like Frank Martin, you're going to start getting the recruits and the transfer portal players that you need to elevate a basketball program. That college basketball is huge. March Madness, if you want to raise the profile of school and make it someplace, like you were saying with that Fruity before in D.C., that pass elevated the school, which was a great school, but just made more people know about it.
Yeah,
So
but Paul, if I may, Paul, you
you
have more expertise in this area than I, so feel free
How much-
to counter what I'm about to say. Doug Flutie is once in a half century kind of football player here in Boston, and I'm not sure what exact year. What was his name? Camby, the center who got disqualified because he took a bracelet. Marcus Camby.
Yeah.
When they were in the national finals,
Dr.
whatever they
J.
were, wasn't it like 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah, it was a long time
so
ago.
So the odds of a UMass team being one of the big-time football or basketball programs is belied by history. So what's wrong with just having it be a fun, great sport for the kids, the community, and alumni, and paying maybe $200,000 to the coach rather than $1.5 million?
Well, if you make an investment in a Frank Martin, like what he did in South Carolina, he took a nothing team, nothing program, and he brought them to maybe the Final Four with a bunch of kids that were not superstars. He has a reputation for making teams.
So you think it's a decent investment?
If you take UMass, I think it's an investment.
Okay, we hear you.
I also trust the people at UMass. I think they know what they're doing.
Well, wait. Explain to me why the head chancellor makes $1.5 million at a public university system here. He's not going to make it a better basketball. Well, maybe he is basketball team. I don't even know Michael Collins. He may be a fine soul, which is irrelevant. $1.4 million, while the woman who we chose to lead the Commonwealth, and apparently the voters think, as I say, we got a pretty good governor, at least so far, is making $230 or something. I mean, really?
Yeah, but the governor payment is apples and oranges, right?
Why?
It's a business decision for people running, because it's an elected official. It's not a business.
Paul, I have a quick
thing.
I have a quick question. How much did it cost freshman year for your kid?
It's about $30,000. It's a good bargain in state.
Is that the whole shebang? Is that room and board and tuition?
The whole shebang is like 36, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's still half the price of.
Paul, you're a really good caller, but when you say it's a business, UMass is a public higher education system, and I'm sorry, we just have a different perspective.
Well, I
on
agree
what
with him.
Thanks, Paul.
If the sports programs are bringing in mega bucks for the schools, to me that's a game changer.
Marjorie,
if they're not, then
Marjorie,
I can't justify.
in your lifetime, I believe this is accurate.
Yeah.
There's been one really high quality basketball team at UMass in your lifetime. So what are the odds that a new coach is going to bring them back to that glory? And by the way, when they hired this guy, the football team, right around the time that Shaughnessy was writing that, they were going to return to, I don't even know if they returned to glory. I don't know if they're, actually, they were a really good team in Division II or whatever it is. Why the odds are virtually nil. And you're not speaking to the chancellor issue. All these I'm serious. We're making jokes about it.
I've been speaking to the chancellor issue since we started.
Paul, thanks for the call.
I think we have 7 chancellors, maybe it's 6 chancellors, but they're all up making $400,000 and $500,000. I tell you, it's unbelievable.
877-301-80. You know what I remember? It just occurred to
Oh, the
me.
average. What's the average state worker in Massachusetts, by the way?
What?
$68,000.
Let me just say, you know what just occurred to me? We did a show years and years ago on a guy who was running Blue Cross, who was
yeah, I remember.
Huge
Killingsworth or something.
Cleve Killingsworth.
Yeah.
Huge diminution in the number of people who belonged to Blue Cross. Basically, Blue Cross under him didn't perform well at all. I think his salary or his payout when he left was $10 million. And a comparison was done in some small newspaper with Mass Health, where they had almost the exact same number of subscribers. The system was rated incredibly highly. And the guy who ran Mass Health, remember how much he was making?
No.
$125,000. So
Wow.
that probably wasn't enough. But this notion that you got to pay $1 million plus in the private sector to get a decent person, maybe Paul's point about the sports teams has some merit. I don't buy it. But to have administrators making this kind of money when we're cutting $1/3 billion from the budget is just wrong.
Okay, Dawn in Newburyport is mad that I said anybody could get into Boston College before Doug Flutie. Not just anybody, but believe me, it wasn't like it is now, Dawn, right? And it's really hard to get into Boston College now because they've just gone. I mean, I live right near there. Every time you turn around, there's another huge building going up. You ever been to the sports facility at Boston College?
Not.
Knock your socks off, Jim. Knock your socks off. Phyllis from Newton. What do you think, Phyllis?
Hey, Phyllis.
Hi there.
Hey.
My son, my daughter-in-law, about 50 years old. They're both academics.
Yeah.
They barely break $100,000 a year. I think you are devaluing the value of an academic career. When someone becomes a chancellor, they've often gone through, worked their way up, and if a corporate CEO earns that much, it's expected. So many people are choosing not to go to college now because it's not a valued, paid, well career when you get out. And why criticize academia and the salary of the people, the men and women who run academia? They deserve what they get.
Well, we don't
everyone, of
I'm
course.
sorry, we don't agree that they deserve what they get. You have to look at what and respect what your kids are doing. And how hard are your kids working at what they're doing, Phyllis?
Oh, they work 12 months a year doing research.
Making $100,000, you said?
Yes.
Do you think the chancellor at UMass is working 14 times harder than they are?
No. But, it's something to reach for in your career.
Okay.
If you were a cub reporter and then you want to be a radio reporter, it's a different salary.
Yeah.
But one thing else.
By the way, there's one day, I was surprised someone didn't bring that up earlier. There's a huge difference. This is the private sector.
Yeah, that's the difference,
The private
Phyllis.
sector,
The difference
you can
is
pay whatever the hell you want to pay.
It's a state school. That's the difference. But thank you for the phone call.
We appreciate it.
I mean,
Phyllis.
it's different.
Oh, she has one more thing. What was your other thing, Phyllis?
I went to Brooklyn College. I paid $50 a semester.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose the best and brightest academics to private schools. And from public institutions, you want to keep the best and brightest and the best administrators at the public institutions.
Phyllis, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
877-301-8970 is the number. We'll squeeze in one more call here. Bill from Pelham, thank you for calling.
Hey, Bill.
Thank you for having me. There's another angle to all of this. This conversation changed about 20 years ago. It used to be, if you want to be a state employee, get the lower salary and you get a great pension.
Right.
Now you get great salaries and great pension because the pension is 80% of your last 3 years.
Right.
Believe me,
So
I know.
As a state policeman or a state cop or whatever, you can pad it at the end, and then we're paying for it forever. So that's completely shifted. So we're now competitive with every other sector, every other university, every other whoever, but now they also get a mega pension, which nobody else is offering. That never changed the conversation.
By the way, do you remember the most legendary example of that? I think that I recall was a particular Senate president was making a little over $100,000 a year. He became president of UMass and was making, what was Bolger making?
I don't know,
Almost $1 million?
but I think his pension is $225,000,
Yeah.
and he got it.
Oh,
For
no, his his pension is more than that because he went to court and he was able to pad it. He was the one who changed it. That if you get
Because the housing allowance, right? He didn't get a housing allowance.
Oh,
I mean,
we forgot the housing allowance.
So
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, a lot of...
That's it. I mean, criminal enterprise ran in that family.
Well put. Even though everything he did was technically legal, we should clear, not his brother, but he himself, Bill Bolton.
I don't know the deal with UMass, but I know a lot of universities do give people housing, and it is true that if you want to get a good pension, you got to go work for the government.
Can I say one last thing about this? I know we have to. And the caller, I think it was Paul, who was a good caller, who said it's not fair to keep comparing it to the governor, who's an elected official. Actually, it is fair. Because what you often hear is you can't get good candidates for office anymore, not just because they get attacked in the current political environment, but because Maura Healey is a corporate lawyer, or Charlie Baker. What's Charlie Baker making now? $4 million? I
don't know.
To run, I think so, to run the NCAA. And I'm sure Maura Healey, as a corporate lawyer, could make $1 million or a couple of $1 million a year. They chose this, and I would argue more reasonable salaries, particularly in the public sector, could get pretty high quality people who just choose public service.
Okay, well, and we're moving on from that. We can ask the governor about it when she gets here.
We will.
We'll ask her if she thinks she should be making $600,000. Okay.
She makes either, I looked it up this morning, either $222 or if she's got a housing allowance, it's $287. It's still less than $250,000 a year.
Oh, those chancellors, Jim.
Maybe next
really
for her.
Something. Coming up after a quick break, NBC Sports Boston's Trenny Casey is here. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming online at facebook.com and /GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. Governor's going to be here in about 30 minutes. She'll be with us for an hour for Ask the Governor. But now we're joined by Trenny Casey. Actually, not just Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, but her college roommate and your dog?
Yeah.
Wow.
Took a walk here. We're going to see Madonna tonight.
You are?
Lisa flew in from Wisconsin to go see Madonna.
Do you hear what
tonight.
time she took the stage last night?
10:15 I hear.
For an 8:30 performance.
Do you know what time I normally go to bed?
What?
9 o'clock.
Exactly. And she's a BPR contributor. Trenny Casey, it's great to see all three of you.
As long as you brought it up, what was her excuse?
That's just what she does. She everywhere. In Europe, she went on earlier, but in the U.S., she just pays the fine to play past midnight, or whatever it is. And she's just, I don't know, maybe it's the lifestyle. If you've always been playing late shows, that's when she is most ready to go. I have no idea, but everyone that has seen the show says it's an incredible performance and that it's well worth it. So, we'll just take a nap this afternoon.
The Garden tweeted out, I actually read this morning, that because some absurd thing, because of the complexities of her show, it took more time, even though she's on tour, obviously. So why doesn't she just schedule the show for 10 o'clock rather than 8:30?
I have no idea.
Thank you very much.
I have no idea.
Nice
but there is a
see.
DJ that we can dance to.
There is?
Oh, that's
good.
There's a DJ opening act.
Well, that would be fun.
Yeah,
That would
it'll
be fun.
It'll be fine. It's one night where I go to bed after midnight.
Good.
So what's going to happen with Bill Belichick, of course, the coach of the New England Patriots? They've had a terrible season. They just lost again to the Jets on Sunday. So we're still up in the air?
We are still up in the air. He apparently met with the Crafts, both Robert and Jonathan, yesterday. According to Mike Reese, who covers the team for ESPN, he just said on the radio, I think 10 or 15 minutes ago, I just saw on X, that it's a Hail Mary for him to return. There's always an outside chance, but no one expects that he will return as the head coach next year. Bleacher Report is reporting that the team is going to meet with Bill Belichick again to try and decide how to do things, which to me, how to do things is how to part ways. But this became very interesting as of Monday. So, Bill does his. Did you guys watch? First of all,
Yes.
Did you watch the game on Sunday?
Yeah, part of it.
Part of it. I mean, terrible game, right? They lose 17-3. Haven't lost to the Jets in 15 times. It's a fitting end for an ugly year where the offense was once again absolutely atrocious. I mean, they could not do anything. Bailey Zappi's clearly not the answer. And I know it was bad weather and all of that, but that's just kind of what the offense is. And I have to admit, there was a point where I'm watching Bill Belichick walk off the field with his hood up. He's been sick all week. You can hear it in all of his press conferences. He's got his face mask up over his nose. Just his eyes are showing and his head is down. And you kind of felt for him. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, poor guy. He makes $25 million a year. He won 6 Super Bowls, blah, 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 blah. He's so wonderful. But, what do you feel bad for him? But I felt bad. You build this incredible program, right? You build this team up to a team that went to the Super Bowl only twice, once in the 80s, once in the 90s, and then win 6 titles, 6 Super Bowls in 2 different eras, essentially, of the NFL. And now this is it. This is how you go. You don't get to have a farewell. You don't get to call your own number, right? So you kind of feel bad for him. And then Monday, he has his usual season-ending press conference, which happens every team every year. All other teams, when at the end of it, when it's all said and done, sometimes those press conferences, guys, are 45 minutes to an hour. Stacey James says, okay, we're going to take questions. First of all, it was virtual. It was over, like Teams, Microsoft Teams.
Can you pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
We have
Do you
some
have
sound from this. A little bit of
Okay.
sound from this. This is Belichick, as Trenny said, at the Monday morning press conference. You also hear a reporter asking if he and Robert Kraft, obviously the owner, have met during the season. Here it is.
As far as the future goes, I'll sit down with Robert, as I do every year at some point at the end of the season, and we'll talk about things as we always do. I'm sure that'll happen. But that's really about all I have to say about that right now, because there's nothing else to talk about.
Well, I mean, look, we're all disappointed in the season, so that's, I already talked about that. And,
How frequently have you guys been in communication over the course of the season?
we've met during the season.
And have they given the public nature of the discussion around the team and you specifically?
So we're doing the follow-ups here, Stacey. I don't understand what's...
We're going to get to in a minute
question.
how he is the rudest, most condescending adult, maybe in America, which is why, despite what you two said, I didn't feel 1 ounce of bad for him walking off the field. He treats people like garbage.
Well, and that's what I started to say before, and I'm glad you played that sound, because it was announced prior to him taking the mic, we are not doing follow-ups. So that means you ask a question and you cannot, no matter what he says within the answer, which sometimes, as a journalist, you guys know this, your best question and your best answer sometimes comes from a question asked off within an answer, because it sparks something in your brain, right? So that reporter who got dressed down, that was Phil Perry from NBC Sports Boston, my colleague,
Good
great
for him,
reporter,
by the way.
who, by the way, has stood up a lot this year,
Yes,
and
I've
has
listened to him.
pushed Bill Belichick on a lot. So he says, "Oh, I thought we weren't doing follow-ups." Other teams, by the way, their season-ending press conferences are 45 minutes to an hour. So that stuck out. A piece of sound that you guys didn't play in his opening statement. So before he's even asked a single question, he talks about the disappointment of the year, and then he slips in this one line. I'm still under contract.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick, in 23 years, has never once mentioned his own contract or been willing to discuss the contracts of anyone on his team. He has always said, we do not discuss contract situations here. And so that was a lob. That was something that was, to use a sort of Taylor Swift type term, an Easter egg, right? He is saying, essentially through the media, Crafts, you want to get rid of me? Go ahead, get rid of me if you want to, but I'm still under contract, so this is not going to be easy. We're just not going to part ways, and it's not going to be flowers and Skittles. We're going to have to figure something out that works for me, because you signed me to a 2-year extension, and I'm not just going to walk away.
Okay, so Trenny, the 2 things I know you're most sick of with me, I'm sure there are other things, is me saying every time we discuss a women's team, why is a woman not coaching that team? And number 2, why do reporters even sit in the room with Bill Belichick? Now, before you answer that, I know you've answered it for me 100 times. If someone were to say to us, why do you go to the press conference for the governor? Because the governor is not, and not this one, a governor is not treating you well. The answer would be, well, there's a lot of important stuff that you learn despite. You learn nothing important ever. That's one. Two, on the press conference after the game, which I watched on Channel 38, Belichick said to these people he said to the reporters who were working really hard to do their jobs, only taking questions on the game. Of course, no one cares about the game. The season's over. They're horrible. The only reporter who had the courage to say, I don't give a damn what you say, and ask a question about his future is Dan Shaughnessy. The others are sitting there, in my opinion, making fools of themselves by saying on third down during the game with the Jets and the snow. And one more thing, and then I'm done. Every reporter on the Monday morning thing had the decency to say to this rude a-hole, good morning, Bill, or good morning, Coach. He never once says it back. He is just insufferably rude, as if these people aren't working just as hard as his damn football players.
I know. And listen, I will say, I do think Phil Perry, once again, in addition to Dan Shaughnessy, at the end of the press conference.
You're right. He
did ask about his job status and whether or not he wanted to come back. Yeah, so it was Shaughnessy and Phil who did it again. And then it was Phil, really, who sort of pushed him yesterday. I mean, the only thing I can say is, we're paid to be there, right? And so sometimes, listen, did I want to watch every Patriots game this year? No, they were terrible. I would have much rather have gone for a walk or a hike or done anything else than watch the stupid Patriots this year score 3 points in every single game and look like garbage, but it's my job to watch, right? And I think that's what these reporters would tell you. It's a miserable experience, but it's the hand we're dealt. It is our job to be here. It is our job to ask the questions, even if we don't get an answer, because that in and of itself, as you know, is an answer, right? So
yeah, but
I don't really know what
then forget him. I don't want to criticize them. Let me just end by saying he, after coaching for 40 years, should realize that hardworking people who happen to be in the media should be treated like human beings.
And this is why I think this, and listen, people think that the reason the media, many of the members of the media are saying it's time to move on from Bill Belichick. Listen, we don't care that he doesn't give us answers. We're not, upset about it. It doesn't hurt our feelings. The reason I feel like they need to move on is because Bill Belichick feels like he doesn't owe anyone an answer, and I think that includes the Kraft family and the people around him. I think that he has won so much and has been given so much power that even when he fails, if you really listen to the press conference yesterday, which I did, I went back and listened to it again. He talks a lot about, collectively we are upset. We are, frustrated with how this year ended. When he was asked a question about whether or not he would relinquish GM duties in order to keep a job as a head coach, he said, we can talk about what's best for our team. We work together. This roster was put together as a team. He doesn't even have the humility to get up in front of everyone and say, this season was a failure and it's my fault. Yeah. This was my fault. Yeah. The buck stops with me. I put the roster together. I do everything. Full stop. It's, it was a collective team effort. A lot of people do things. And that to me is why it's time to move on, because I don't care what other pieces you bring in. Not much is going to change. You might be slightly better. There are some rumors out there that maybe they would bring back Josh McDaniels, the old offensive coordinator, who's now been fired twice, by the way, of head coaches of other teams. Maybe bring back a guy like Scott Pioli to be in charge. But all those guys are Belichick guys. It's insular. They all bowed to him, and everything at the end of the day will still run through him. And I don't know how you rebuild a franchise that is at a turning point with the exact same thing you've done for the last 20 years, even if for the first 20 of those 24 years, it was wildly successful.
You obviously know a million times more about this than I do, but don't I recall when Brady was here, when he had a lousy game, he did say, I had a lousy game. He did take responsibility.
Mac Jones, love or hate the kid, but he would take responsibility. Yeah. Bailey Zappi, I made bad decisions. Yeah. That's what we expect of our leaders, right?
That's a great point. Belichick hasn't said that.
I think it would go. I honestly think he could save his job or curry some favor if he just said, you know what, this is on me. This is on me. And if they don't want to retain, he's not going to say that because you don't want to put it out there that you don't want a job. But I'm fascinated to see how this plays out over the next couple of days. Other teams who have fired coaches are already starting to build a list of people that they want to hire, people they want to bring in. It is thought that the the Patriots have a little extra time because they think they might go with Gerard Mayo as the new head coach, who's already in-house. Everyone's familiar with him, but they'll still have to go through a search, so that might give them some wiggle room. But it's fascinating to see how this all plays out.
Could he be, I just realized, I forgot that since he endorsed Trump in 2016, since he's so good verbally, could he be Secretary of State
Sure.
in the next Trump administration?
What is it? The press, what is he? Press secretary.
Press
secretary.
He could just retire.
He could, you know what? It is, and it's been suggested too that rather than go and be a coach next year, say, fine, Crafts, you don't want me anymore. Pay me the $25 million. I'm going to go sit my behind on the set at ESPN, Fox, or CBS. Have them pay me $10 million or $20 million to work 17 or 18 Sundays and be a media guy. You could also be. He could go into the media for a year, take a year off.
Yeah.
Because you guys, 70. He's 71, about to be 72. That age is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
Like he's got it. I honestly do think he's still a good head coach. I just think sometimes, just like in relationships, friendships, marriages, things run their course. I think it's run their course.
Okay, so we were going to talk next about another a-hole, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh,
But
please.
because I'm too... No, let's not.
Come on.
Let's talk about the professional
I want
women's...
to talk about Jimmy Kimmel's response to Aaron Rodgers.
Can we
was
do
funny.
positive things
It
first?
was, no.
Okay, fine.
We can't.
We can
explain
fit
what-
both in. We can fit
Explain
both
what
in.
Aaron Rodgers did that caused Jimmy Kimmel to respond like he did last night.
It's really disgusting. Aaron Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show, which is sort of a free-flowing talk show, and he said he couldn't wait for the Jeffrey Epstein list to come out and see Jimmy Kimmel's name on it.
Yeah.
And so suggesting that Jimmy Kimmel is a pedophile, and like just to be able to blatantly throw that out there, and no one. Talk about not pushing back. You talk about not pushing back on Belichick. There wasn't a single person on that show that said, whoa, Aaron, did you just say what I think you said? Like, you're accusing this man of being a sexual predator, and you're saying it flippantly and jokingly on this show. And Rodgers is supposed to, I think, address it today, but there has been some fallout from it. ESPN, that show has been hammered now for not getting the ratings, being worth the money that they pay Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee, who before never really faced any criticism, is now facing a lot of criticism for a number of things that have happened on his show this year. I just don't understand how, in this day and age, our most popular shows are shows where people who are very influential go unchecked. Like, to me, that's the most egregious part of this, is that there wasn't a single person that's a part of the Pat McAfee show that was like, do you want to rephrase that? You just called a guy a pedophile.
That's like saying, I'm with you. It's saying as ridiculous as saying, I don't know, we could have an insurrectionist as president. That could never.
I know.
Okay, so here's
let's hear Jimmy Kimmel
last night responding. He did it for 7 minutes. This is only 20 seconds of it.
And it did come out, and of course my name wasn't on it, and isn't on it, and won't ever be on. I don't know Jeffrey Epstein. I've never met Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not on a list. I was not on a plane or an island or anything ever, and I suggested that if Aaron wanted to make false and very damaging statements like that we should do it in court so he could share his proof with like a judge.
I hadn't heard. I thought he did it as a comedy thing to mock him. It's like a totally serious takedown kind of thing.
And I don't blame him. I mean, this idea, this idea that you can say whatever you want about people without consequence, I just,
Well,
I
didn't
don't
Aaron
like
Rodgers lie to his team or imply that he'd been vaccinated where he wasn't
absolutely.
vaccinated?
Yeah.
And so he was good on Jeopardy.
He was fabulous as host of Jeopardy.
I mean, there was
I'm
a
glad
great
he didn't
column,
get
and
it
I know we want to get to the Professional Women's Hockey League, and we have a couple
Buckner's
minutes.
column?
But Candace Buckner's
really
column is
good.
great. Is that Aaron Rodgers at the start of his career, before he went really kind of nutso, was actually a guy who stood up for some things, and he kind of stood his own ground, and it was usually for, he's always been great with kids with cancer, and he actually stood up for Colin Kaepernick. He was one of the only big-time players that stood up for him. But I don't know what has changed, what has happened, but again, I think like a lot of very famous people who start saying things and they get praised and praised and praised, they suddenly feel they can say anything without any consequences.
Okay, before we get to the Professional Women's Hockey League, sitting over there is a friend of ours who is the former head of the TD Garden. Larry Moulter, was it okay that Madonna did not come out till 10:15 last night, yes or no? Fine with me, he says.
Yeah, because he's probably home and in bed already.
He probably was there last night. Okay, so here is this woman whose name maybe Teresa Schaffsel, I think is her name. She scores the Professional Women Hockey League Boston team's only goal last Wednesday.
Nope, they scored 2 goals. So their first
goal. My apologies.
That's okay.
Against Minnesota. Here's the sound.
Another shot. Bounce scores! Teresa Shopsall, the first goal in PWHL Boston season.
This is great. This is in Lowell, right?
Yep, they play at the Tsongas Center at UMass Lowell. There were I think 4,500 people. They actually released more tickets. So the PWHL is the new professional women's hockey league. There are only 6 teams. There are 3 in the United States, New York, Minnesota, Boston, and there are 3 in Canada, Ottawa, Toronto, and I believe Montreal. And they're keeping it small for a reason. I actually read a really great piece in the Globe about this this league. Hillary Knight, who we all know, the great Olympian, really spearheaded this movement to make a sustainable women's hockey league. Because in the past, it was broken up between a Canadian league and a U.S. league. There were hardly any salaries. The women had to find their own personal trainers, their own nutritionists, their own chiropractors. And so while the salaries here aren't very high, low end is $35,000 a year, high end is $80,000, like nothing compared to what you would make in the NHL. Stan Kasten is one of the biggest names and investors in this, part owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. The other owners of the Los Angeles Dodgers, billionaire guys, are big investors in this, and they have committed tens of millions of dollars to this league for a long term, for a decade plus, knowing that it's going to take time to build this into a profitable league. They don't expect to make money right away, but what they wanted to do was give female hockey players a chance to truly be professionals. So while you might not make $1 million to start, maybe the next generation makes 6 figures and the next generation makes 7 figures, but they wanted them to not have to worry about all the little things. They have health insurance, paid parental leave. They get medical treatment, everything that you would need if you are a professional male hockey player. You get that in this female league. Again, the salaries aren't there, but they are building it, and they're looking at it from a really strategic standpoint where they expect it to be profitable in time, but they know that they have to build it up. And I thought a quote that Hillary Knight had in there was really smart, because I think a lot of times it's hard as a female. Like, you want the same stuff that the men have had for so long. And she said, listen, we're a literal century behind the NHL. It's not going to happen all at once, and I may not reap the benefits, but the people after me might, and that is worth it in itself. So if you have a chance, there was a great, did you guys watch the game at all?
I watched some clips.
My husband's Sean's a huge hockey fan. We watched a chunk of it. He knows a lot more about hockey than I do. He's like, this is great.
Well,
hockey.
Bergeron was there.
Bergeron was there.
The
Kids were there.
Leaders of the Bruins were there. By the way, so now we have the women's football team, which we're all going to go to the first game of in April. And the quarterback is your trainer, right?
Yep.
She was
Allison.
fabulous. She came in. We have the soccer league. We had the 3 women investors come in the studio.
And now
That's
we have
happening.
the Professional Women's Hockey League.
That's fabulous.
And then you have the WNBA, which has been here for 2 decades. Obviously in Connecticut, but still in New England.
So we got to patronize it is the bottom line.
Absolutely.
We'll have them on. We'll patronize it. Nice to see you, your dog, and your roommate.
Come give her a little pet.
I'm coming over to see the dog in just a second. Thank you very much, Tony Casey from NBC Sports Boston. Tony Casey is a BPR contributor, and we're very grateful, as always, that she comes down to see us here at the library. Coming up right after the noon news, we're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey. She is next for the entire hour, taking our questions and yours. You can call her or text her at 877-301-8970, or you can come down to the library and ask her a question yourself. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
we're surrounded by 12 hills, and I can just tell you where all that water goes from those 12 hills. It comes down.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey. She is en route. Meanwhile, Jim and I will chit-chat.
About chancellors at UMass. By the way,
we'll ask the governor about the chancellors.
I had a feeling you might. By the way, in addition to calling or texting the governor at 877-301-8970, if you happen to be here or are contemplating coming here, Hannah, our coworker, is right over there. Hello, Hannah. And if you have a question, she'll give you a piece of paper. Is that what you do? Yeah, a little card thing. You fill it out, and she'll look at it, and if it passes some test, you will have an opportunity to ask the question to the governor face-to-face.
You know, I wanted to mention, we were talking about the professor salaries at UMass, and some of them are pretty high up there, 400 and 500 grand. And I got a couple of texts from people who are adjunct professors who are making like nothing, and they are really struggling. There's a lot of associate professors or adjunct professors who really don't do well at all. And they didn't say they were at UMass, but that's through, I think, throughout the system, that people do not make that much money until they get to be a full tenured professor.
So again, the number when the governor gets here, which is supposed to be imminently, is 877-301-8970. We're going to talk to her about a bunch of things. Obviously, I don't think, did we see her in December? We may have missed her in December.
I don't think we saw her in
I think we had some
December.
holidays. So obviously, she has a year in office. We'll talk about that. The COVID numbers are up, which are a little troubling, I have to say, to me. They're not nearly as bad as they were at the worst time of the pandemic, but they're not particularly good. She wants to talk about this financial aid application for undocumented students in higher ed here. We'll talk about that, the state of the migrant housing situation. And she is also, interestingly, I didn't know this till last night when I was reading for today. Do you know that she is helping to, I guess, coordinate, I don't know what the verb is, the write-in effort for Joe Biden for the New Hampshire primary, because I think people know he's not on the ballot there because the decision of the Democratic National Committee, I think it's the National Committee, decided, is that South Carolina should be the first state to have a primary because New Hampshire is not exactly terribly diverse. And now his supporters, including Governor Healey, are concerned that he wins that through write-in. And actually, rather than me describing it, in a couple of minutes, she'll get to describe it herself. Please welcome the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey.
Hello, Governor Healey.
Hey, good morning.
How are you? Happy New Year.
It's afternoon.
Whatever it is.
Happy New Year.
And to you.
Yeah.
How are you? Did you do anything fun?
Great. No, I mean fun. It was fun to just not leave the house, work from home for a couple of days.
Yeah. Good enough answer for me.
That's true. How's that? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I left all my shopping till what was it, the 23rd? What was that Saturday?
Oh my God.
Made the most of it.
It's rather
Got it all
sad.
done. If you leave yourself little time, it only takes a little time to get it done.
Is that true?
Well, that's kind of been my life story.
Yeah. I think you can get good
I'm all
bargains.
too practiced at it.
I think you get good bargains on the 23rd, 24th. If you leave it to the last minute, you can even get cheap poinsettias, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth the stress, but
It's very stressful.
So let me give
All
the number
good.
one more time, 877-301-8970. The lines are full. If you're here, you can go to Hannah and ask a question in person. If you're impatient and don't want to wait till someone hangs up on the phone, you can text at the same number, 877-301-8970.
So, Governor Healy, I'm dying to ask you, because we were talking about this with our listeners before you got here. I know you've got to make some budget cuts. You just announced you're going to make a $375 million in budget cuts. And we read the story in the Globe about the salaries up at UMass. And it wasn't just UMass, but a lot of it was UMass, and a lot of it was state troopers, too. 1.5 million for one of the coaches, and all these chancellors, 800,000, 600,000, 700,000, 500,000 professors. There were dozens of people making over 300 grand, and it just seemed kind of high to me, very high to me for a state school. And I wonder what you thought about it. I don't know what chancellors do. Maybe you do, but there were about 6 or 7 of them that were pulling in, 500 and 600 grand.
Well, let me say, I'm mindful right now in the moment that we're in, and there are a lot of people struggling right now with affordability. And it seems like every time you go to the grocery store, no matter what you pull off the shelf is $5. If it's not $5, then it's $4. So, let me just say that at the outset. It's also why my administration focused so hard on tax cuts, which, are going to deliver real savings to folks around the state. When it comes to things like the salary list that you saw the other day, I just want to level set a little bit. First of all, when it comes to coaches' salaries at UMass, the significant portion, it looks like a big number, the significant portion of that is coming from private revenue generation at the facility, and a lot of it is coming through friends and boosters groups. Okay, it's not taxpayer dollar.
So the 1.6 million for the basketball coach is not all?
Reflect. It does. I talked to UMass. It does not reflect taxpayer dollar. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want people to understand that. Because you see that number and you're like, whoa, right? But understand that a significant portion of that is not taxpayer dollar.
So when it says the Massachusetts, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when it says the Massachusetts state payroll, that means that the Massachusetts state payroll is reimbursed? Because the way the Globe wrote it was the Massachusetts state payroll.
I understand how it was written. I'm just telling you what the facts are. And then when it comes to higher ed, Massachusetts, we're home to the first college in the country. We're a state that has prided itself on education and support for our colleges and universities, and to attract and retain the talent to ensure that we are on the forefront of higher education in this country means that we need to make sure that people are compensated. And that's what you see. And in terms of the number of state troopers, I think there were just a couple on that list. And look, they get that because they're working detail after detail and overtime after overtime. And, I stand by those numbers there too. So, I'm, as governor, very mindful of the fiscal responsibility that I have to taxpayers. It's why I think we took the prudent step that we needed to take in terms of a little bit of rate sizing just the other day. And it's also important that we make, the kind of investments that we need to make.
Do you have any regrets? You mentioned the tax cut. You campaigned on the tax cut. Obviously, you considered it, I think, the major accomplishment, if not at least one of them, if not the major accomplishment of your first year. We'll talk about other things in your first year in a few minutes. Do you have any regrets looking back at the size of the tax cut in light of the fact you had to cut almost $400 million from the budget yesterday?
Not at all. The tax cut was absolutely, in my view, imperative. It was imperative to make this state more affordable for people. As a result of that tax cut, which $1 billion tax cut, first time in over 20 years we've seen a tax cut. Let me tell you what it's going to do. This spring, seniors are going to see $2,400 off of their tax bill as a result of that tax cut. Families with children at home or dependents at home are going to be able to take the most generous tax credit in the country. That's important. That's real savings to families. 70% of what we did through that tax cut is going to seniors and families, people with kids, people with dependents at home, and the like. That's really, really important,
The
Jim.
estate tax change is not going to those people, though. It's going to wealthier. I understand
No, you know what? I'll tell you
is a big issue.
I'm going to tell you a story about the estate tax, okay? At home on trick or treat on Halloween, one of the neighbors comes up to me and says, "You know what? We just sold and this is in our little, neighborhood in East Arlington. We just sold our mom's house around the corner, and thank you, because of that estate tax, my brothers and sisters and I, they're probably in their 60s, we're gonna be able to save $60,000-$70,000. Thank you, because that's going to help us support our kids. So when I think about estate tax, not only was it right-sizing, bringing us in line. Again, we're one of only 12 states with an estate tax in the entire country. By increasing that threshold from what it was to up to $3 million, it allows people like that fellow to see, to recognize, the savings. It also, is, there's a. I'm proud of that. I'm glad you brought up the tax cuts, because I think that was one of the most significant accomplishments. It's something I ran on, I promised, we delivered on. It's making life more affordable for people in our state and making our state more competitive and equitable.
Before we get to the calls, what else would you say is in the top 3 or 4 things that you feel you accomplished that you feel really good about in year 1?
School meals. As of today, bless you,
Marjorie.
Thank you. No parent in the state has to worry about how they're going to pay for breakfast or lunch during the school week for their kids. That's a big deal. Community college, making it free to those 25 and older, lowering the cost of in-state tuition for residents here at our state colleges and university, appointing the country's first climate chief, and making significant investments in workforce, in education. Expanding access to mental health services. These are just some of the things. The reason I was late, I came in a few minutes late. Thank you for filibustering around.
We're good at
whatever you were doing around
Jim
the primary.
is really good.
But I was just with a fellow at the State House, and he's 41 years old, and he was coming for a recovery event, and he was coming from North Adams. He grew up here in Hyde Park, and when he graduated from high school, it was 9/11, and he enlisted in the Marines. He was injured. He got addicted to opioids as a result of that injury. He spent the next 20 years in hell and in a variety of programs. And he said, I wanted to thank you because I'm in a successful program now. I'm doing great. And because of your program, Mass Reconnect, free community college to those 25, I am going to Berkshire Community College. I'm studying STEM and 3D printing, and I'm on the road to the kind of job that I want. That's a story representative of some of what we were able to do this year. I think our response to farmers, frankly, remember the devastating flooding around this state. We rallied. I appointed the first rural affairs director ever. We had our new commissioner of agriculture, who happens to be from a farming family in Western Mass, on the ground. We quickly were able to work with the legislature, get $20 million in relief to help those farmers survive. We were able to reach out to private philanthropy and create a fund, $3 million, that also went to farmers. It's another example of success, I believe, because it shows, the ways in which we can come together as a state.
What's your biggest disappointment from year 1? What didn't you get that was high on your priority list, Governor Healy?
You always want to see more done more quickly, right? I mean, that's just kind of the inherent nature of the job. And I think that both the LG and our teams bring to this a real urgency around getting stuff done as quickly as possible. But I'm just grateful to the teams across the administration. I'm grateful to the partnership with the legislature. And I'm grateful to the way that so many people stepped up around the state over the last year. Do we have our challenges? Absolutely. And, the biggest challenge we face is housing, the lack of housing. We need to make housing more affordable to first-time homebuyers, to renters, to seniors. It's why I filed the $4 billion housing bill that I did, the Affordable Homes Act, and that's something I'm going to be laser focused on this year, because I don't want housing to be the problem that it is right now in our state. Our state is a great state if you can afford to live here.
Can I ask one question about housing, and then you'll take over? Is that okay?
Sure.
Since you brought it up, there are 2 tough nuts to crack, I would argue, for this legislature. Is one, this real estate transfer tax on higher end transactions, which will obviously go to affordable housing. It sort of mirrors with a different ceiling what Mayor Wu did in a home rule petition. And also this statewide legislation that would override local zoning rules around those granny flats, or whatever the hell they're called, accessory dwelling units, those sort of things, which means they have to stand up to local officials, sort of like the legislature for once did it on this zoning thing, around the T-stops. What are your conversations like with leaders on those 2 issues?
Well, I think everybody recognizes how dominant housing is as an issue here in the state. And, I want people coming here. I want people going to school here and staying here. I want people growing businesses here. I want employers expanding here. And I want people who were born and raised here to be able to stay here. And that's why we need to do all we can to create more housing out there. So the conversations have been positive. And, I'm ready to work with anyone on this issue. I think that the legislature understands that because, we're all hearing from people, right? And they're certainly hearing from constituents. What we laid out in that $4 billion bond bill are a number of ways that we can get there. The ADUs are an example. ADUs have been in place by right in other states around the country, and it's a very quick way to create a whole bunch more housing around the state. It makes a lot of sense. So, it's just one of any number of ways to get there, but we must get there for the economic well-being of the state, for the direction of the state. We've slowed finally out-migration, but we need to just continue to keep working on this, and it's the top priority. It's also, Jim, why when I started, we said that we were going to deliver a housing secretary, and we have for the first time in our state's history a secretary of housing and livable communities. And from day one, when he started in March, he has been all about finding ways to generate more housing. And the Affordable Homes Act is the result of that.
We're talking with Governor Maura Healey. She's here until the top of the hour to take your calls and our questions and your questions, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Daisy in Dorchester. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Daisy.
Hi there.
Hi.
My question for the governor relates to the budget cuts and also the fact that today's news is filled with the official count that 2023 was the hottest year in 125,000 years. And I'm also aware that the Commonwealth released a report that it's not on track to meet our own climate goals. So my question is for the governor, how are you thinking about the fact that ratepayer money goes to utilities to finance new fossil fuel pipelines and compressor stations, while there's also an underway expansion of the private jet airport at Hanscom, which would provide flights for the ultra-rich, subsidized by the public, and with this expansion canceling out the progress that the Commonwealth has already made for decarbonization using taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy.
Well, Daisy, thanks so much for the call. And, one of the areas I think we've made a lot of progress on is climate here in the state. I promised and delivered the country's first ever climate chief, Melissa Hoffer. She sits atop all agencies and secretariats, making sure that we are driving everything we need to do to achieve our climate goals, whether it's in transportation or in housing or in infrastructure or even in education, health, and human services. That's the first thing. You also saw this year a historic investment in programs that go towards resilience, that deal with the problems that we are facing right now that are going to manifest, by the way, in 24 hours as we see a storm with more potential flooding, with more potential blown culverts and dams and bridges. We've got to, in the state, make these investments that in infrastructure to build forward in a more resilient and more sustainable way, and we are leading on that. It's also the case that I made a real effort to chase every single federal dollar out there, because we can do what we can do through what was a $56 billion budget this year, $55 billion budget this year, but Joe Biden has made available for climate unbelievable amounts of money, $1 trillion available to municipalities and states for climate and infrastructure, the things that Daisy is concerned about. What I did is set up an office of federal funds and infrastructure to make sure that we were applying for every single dollar that we could get our hands on. And to date, this year alone, we've brought back $2 billion to the state, including much of that to go towards infrastructure. It's hard work. It's absolutely necessary work as we make the necessary transition away from fossil fuels. It's also why I went big. The biggest bid ever for offshore wind, 3,600 megawatts. We know that There have been struggles right now with some of the pricing there, but I'm standing by it. This is where we need to go as a Commonwealth. This is where we need to go as a country. And I think next week or the week after, when you see our budget for fiscal year 25, you will see continued historic investments in all that we need to do to address climate.
By the way, the president of Vineyard Wind is going to be with us on Friday with Mayor Curtatone, who's now running a climate trade
And
group.
we just, there's a lot happening out there. Folks, we just had the first power delivered to our grid from our offshore wind industry. That's something to celebrate. It happened here in the holiday season. Didn't get as much attention probably as it otherwise would. But just pause for a second. That's really cool, really important. And what our job is to do all that we can to scale that up and increase that volume as quickly as possible.
Governor, Daisy also asked about expanding Hanscom Field for private planes, which are terrible polluters. Do you favor that?
It's currently before review in one of our agencies, so I'm not going to comment until I see the report.
But I guess, I don't know how, it seems so opposite to everything we're trying to do here. You don't want to comment on it, one way or the other?
Really, given where it is, the posture of the agency, it's better for me not to. As I've said and just said a minute ago, I support all we need to do to make sure that we're moving away from fossil fuels, which is why I've leaned into wind. It's why I asked our team to deliver a report on solar. Where are the spots in the Commonwealth that are ripe for solar, whether it's on top of municipal buildings or other areas of land? We've got to do all we can. It's why we set up for the first time in state government a team that is working with other New England states, and in fact with states up and down the Mid-Atlantic, because our climate the responsibility, what we need to do in this space, particularly when it comes to, setting up these other non-fossil fuel related energy sources, and also making sure that we have the infrastructure in a grid to deliver that to people's homes and businesses, requires that states actually collaborate and work together. And I'm really proud of the team for having the foresight, and Massachusetts is in the lead on this as convener and organizer of all the New England and Mid-Atlantic states on how we together work to deliver more non-fossil fuel energy power.
One last question on this. What's the entity that's going to make the Hanscom decision? What's it called?
It's currently is part of our MEPA process within our Department of Environmental Protection.
Why would you not want the public to know and them to know what the governor's position is on this critical issue that's before him?
Because I respect the work of my teams.
Okay. 877
I don't mean to obsess over this, but I just can't see how there could possibly be any justification at all.
Well, let's let them do their job and make their ruling and their decision.
Okay.
Where are we going next? 877-301-8970.
Before we go back to the calls, coronavirus levels are going up.
Yikes.
In Boston wastewater, and there seems to be a resurgence of the virus. Is there anything particular that we should know about that from your angle as the governor?
Robbie Goldstein's done a terrific job as our commissioner of the Department of Public Health. I would just encourage people, to get their vaccine, to get their boosters. There are flu shots, there are shots for RSV. Avail yourself and your family of those resources.
Kendra in Merrimack, thank you for calling. You're on with the governor.
Hi, thank you. First, I'd like to thank you, Governor, for the high priority your administration has placed on addressing the climate crisis. And I have two questions, quickly. One, when will rebates from the Inflation Reduction Act be available to Massachusetts residents to help electrify their homes, as these require states to set up programs to implement them? And two, are there any plans to clearly communicate to residents all of the money available for electrification of their homes from both the federal and the state, because the number of options is really confusing to people? Thank you.
Kendra, I am so glad you mentioned that. I had the same conversation with my team the other day, and it was basically like, let's make sure that we're serving up a menu to folks about what is available and what can they do. Because, this is an area where I think climate, it can be really overwhelming, when there's some you can just sort of throw your hands up in the air, like, how can I begin to make a difference in this space? The fact is, we all have agency. We can make a difference in our households and how we live our lives. And so, Kendra, you'll see soon more about that. And specifically, I'm going to hold on I need a lifeline here. Somebody call and find out when Kendra's question about the rebates for the Inflation Reduction Act, when folks can start seeing that.
The governor is talking to one of her colleagues, her staff people, by the way. If people are wondering at home, what is she doing?
Oh, just a
here?
random lifeline to the ether? No,
To
there's actually
whoever,
a
right?
person here who's going to call DOER. And maybe Kendra will get you an answer before the end of the program.
Hey, Kendra, actually, do you want Kendra to take our numbers? So if we don't...
That's even better.
Kendra, we'll take your numbers, so if we don't have an answer by 1 o'clock, the
This
governor's
reminds
office
me of
will
Ask the
communicate.
AG. Remember I had to get all those questions and I'd be
I do
like, can you
remember
please
that, yeah.
stay on the line and take your number?
I think I remember that.
Exactly.
Kendra, stick around and we'll take your contact information. Thank you much for the call. 877-301-8970. You want to do the audience there, Marjorie?
Sure. We have a
Eric.
gentleman there. Yep.
Eric has a question about highway deaths. Is that correct? Where are you, Eric? While Eric is moving, we're going to take another call. Elaine in Lexington. Hello, Elaine.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Governor. Good afternoon, Marjorie and Jim.
Good afternoon, Elaine.
I'm calling because I'm struggling with affordability on my long-term care insurance premium. Since 2020, that premium has increased 100%. In 2023, I received a bill with a $2,000 increase on the premium due in 30 days. No advance notice. I'd like to know if there's someone I can speak to at the governor's office or what actions I can take. I just can't believe that this increase is condoned, especially without notice.
Yeah. Elaine, let us take your number, and I'll make sure that we talk to folks on the team to see if there's anything we can do about that. I'm really mindful of people's increased costs, and certainly, healthcare in that space generally, and care in that space, we've seen exponential growth, and we've got to try to get a handle on it.
Elaine, do not go away. We're going to get your contact information and share it with the governor's office too, and they'll be in touch with you.
And now we're going to speak with Eric, who's at the Boston Public Library microphone. Hi, Eric. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
My name is Eric Shivian. I've been a practicing physician in the Commonwealth for more than 50 years. I greatly admire you, Governor Healy, particularly for appointing the spectacular Melissa Hoffer as climate czar.
Thanks, Eric.
I have a comment and a question. Is this feedback?
No, it's working.
It's working, okay.
We're good.
Every week Can you hear?
Oh, yes.
Can hear, yeah.
And I can see you.
I want you to hear it. Every week I drive 140 miles to central Massachusetts and back on Route 2. Almost all of the cars and trucks are going over 70 miles per hour. About half are going over 80, and many over 85 and 90 miles per hour. 2-ton assault weapons, often separated by only a few feet from each other, some passing each other at high speed on the right and also on the left. I almost never see a state trooper anywhere, and when I do, he or she generally does nothing about the speeding. 2022 was the second consecutive record year for traffic deaths in Massachusetts. 430 people were killed. I expect 2023 will break that record. I've worked for many years in emergency rooms, and all it takes is to see one dead, mangled child from a car crash, and I have seen many, to know that this lawless driving on state roads must not be allowed to continue.
Doctor, we need a question. My
Here
apologies.
it comes.
Here it is. Thank you.
Comes.
Thank you kindly.
My question, Governor Healy, is what are you doing and what are you planning to do about this unacceptable threat to our lives? A threat that can be massively reduced simply by enforcing speeding laws, at the same time massively increasing state revenues.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. Where do you practice in Central Mass?
I don't practice in Central Mass. I practice in Boston. I have a farm in Petersham, Massachusetts, quite near Melissa Hoffer's goat farm.
That's it's a beautiful. That's where
we're supposed to bring the Christmas trees, I guess, for the goats to eat them.
Well, let me take that back, Eric, and talk to our Executive Office of Public Safety. I mean, we saw through COVID an increase, I think, nationally, coming out and during that time, and in fatalities. It's a national issue, so let me take that back. I know one of the things we're thinking about is enforcement and the use of technology around enforcement, so it's not just personnel on the roads, but actually technology as well. So I appreciate the comment, and thank you for what you do in caring for people, and I can imagine how horrible it is to bear witness to that. And, you know, people's recklessness or disregard for others and the lives of others, it's a point worth reminding us all about.
Doctor, if you leave your contact information with Hannah, our coworker, the governor, we'll give it to the governor's office. Thank you for coming.
Please do.
Can we stay in
Thank you.
transportation for a minute? I'm going to preempt you saying how impressed you are with Philip Eng so far, because we are too.
Very.
Okay, and we know you are. We've read you say it, but obviously Philip Eng is the new head of the T.
Ted Lasso.
We discussed, he was kind enough to take calls, by the way, which was really great, unlike his predecessors who hid out historically, but that's our opinion, not yours. We talked to him about the narrow tracks on the Green Line and how virtually the whole line has got to be expanded to deal with slowness and safety and that sort of thing. We also raised the name of the man, this Dalton guy, who was in charge of the Green Line expansion when all this was happening, and he focused. He didn't really want to talk about accountability there. And I don't mean this in a pejorative way. I'm just trying to be descriptive. He said, we want to get this fixed, that we're not going to have the fare payers or the taxpayers pay anymore. I know you've made the same assurance. If someone like Dalton, who, at least based on Globe coverage, covered up this situation and potentially put people at risk financially and in terms of their health, is not held accountable, why is there an incentive for another Mr. Dalton to not do the same kind of thing when serving state government, Governor?
Yeah, I think that people understand, you know, and I want taxpayers and residents to know. I mean, everybody is expected to do their job well, certainly competently. There's a review ongoing as to what happened there, okay? So I'm going to let that proceed, and whatever actions need to be taken will be taken. I have said, though, that when it comes to the contractor in this particular engagement on GLX, on the Green Line extension, that I don't want to see a dime of taxpayer money having to go to rectify the situation. So we'll see where their review lands. But, you know, I am focused, Jim, as I think I need to be, on the now. What are we doing now to make things move faster and assure the public that the public transit is safe and reliable?
Are we entitled to know why Dalton decided not to disclose this allegedly to Governor Baker and the public?
Well, I think that review is ongoing, and all that information will be made available. And I'm not crediting what you're presupposing in your comment either. I'm just telling you that, of course, I'm going to make everything available.
But it is factually accurate that he didn't disclose to anybody, as far as we know, including the governor, according to the governor's spokesperson.
I mean, it appears to be that way.
Were too narrow.
It appears to be that way, but like, you know, nobody was more pissed off than I was when I learned this, because we have had to clean up one thing after another when it comes to the T. That is why I'm thrilled that GM Eng is on the job. I'm thrilled that we hired 1,400 new T workers. I'm thrilled, by the way, anybody coming from the North Shore, you know, filling our T delivered on a promise, which was, you know, a year ago, people were told that people in Lynn weren't going to see a commuter rail stop for another 2 years. Phil Eng comes on the job. I said to him, how quickly can you get this built? He said December. He opened ahead of time. So now the good news is people come from that area, don't have to take a bus, don't have to drive up to Swampscott to then get on a train to come in. They can get on right in Lynn, which will shave an hour off a commute. So, you know, we're making progress. The whole shutdown right now, we're here in Back Bay. Green Line right now, according to the plan that we set forward, which is to eliminate all slow zones in less than a year. Green Line is shut down right now, so buses are going between North Station and Fenway, I believe. You know, it's just like, these are the things we need to do to systematically reduce the slow zones. We're down to about 16% right now. We continue to make progress. I'm going to continue to work with the team, push the team. And that's what we need to do.
One last transportation question. When you were elected governor, the first conversation we had with you was about transparency and how this state is the least transparent in terms of public records of any state in America, which is a fact. That's not an opinion. We talked to you a couple of months ago about the former Secretary of Transportation leaving and the public not really knowing. You said to us that it was mutual. This is Fiandaca. BUR is reporting there was a non-disclosure agreement where she can't criticize you, the government, and you can't criticize her. How does that serve the public when a critical public official leaves and an agreement has been signed that precludes us from knowing anything that might be of value to us about her tenure leaving?
That's not what it says. It's a non-disparagement, I believe. But
non-disparagement. I'm sorry.
It's different. And folks, not only did we disclose that agreement, we've answered all the questions about it.
I meant the non-disparagement.
Yeah,
My apologies.
well, those are different. And when it comes to the Department of Transportation, I am impressed and pleased with the leadership team there, and we're just going to continue to move forward, making sure that we're doing all we can to deliver public transit in the state that is safe and reliable, and also that we're making the investments that we need to make in transportation generally across the state. And by the way, we're not just talking about Boston or Greater Boston. I mentioned that federal funds program. One of the things that we chased and got was $100 million for important rail investments that are going to help enable East-West Rail, right? These are the things we need to be doing. Investments in our regional transit authorities so that people in central and western Massachusetts and the Cape are able to get about more easily, to the store, to doctor's appointments and the like. So this has been a big focus. Look, we introduced water transit for the first time, right? And more investments need to be made there. So I'm really excited about the new energy, the new innovation at our Department of Transportation. It's what the public deserves, and it's what you're going to get.
Governor, one last thing about the T. There's a bunch of different companies that were involved in this Green Line extension that was turned out to be faulty and was known for back in 2021. And these companies that were responsible didn't respond to the Globe's request for comment. So what do you do? Do you have to take these people to court? I mean, you said we're not going to spend any money on this. I don't imagine they're going to just come back and rebuild things for free without some pressure.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the investigation, and we're prepared to take whatever action is necessary.
So it could be wind up in court.
Could we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I hope short of that, but. When people are contracted to do certain work, I expect them to perform. And if they didn't, and it wasn't under my watch, then we're going to hold them accountable.
We're talking to the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. Much more importantly, this hour, the governor is with us for her monthly Ask the Governor. She's with us till a little bit after 1 o'clock. You can contact her at 877-301-8970, either by call or text, or you can come to the mic at the studio, as Lynn did, from Moms Demand Action. Didn't you tell us your first meeting as governor was with Moms Demand Action? Isn't that true?
You can say yes.
I'm just going back. That may well be, and also, my relationship with Moms Demand Action goes way, way back to the time I was not Attorney General, but was in the Attorney General's office.
Great.
So
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you
it's
for your
always
first
great
year.
to see the red shirts.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and we keep changing them up a little bit. So, but thank you for your first year in service. I was at your swearing in last year. So I have a question, but I also wanted to just remind everybody that we have a gun sense bill up at the State House, and the House passed a bill in November, and the Senate is now planning to do their own version. And we know we have your support, but we'd like to hear what you have to say about where it is, and I want to be there when you sign the bill.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being here. We're taking a look at that, and we'll talk with, we'll continue to talk with members of the legislature about the legislation. And as you know, I've been a strong supporter of important gun safety laws and reforms there.
So we have two events coming up tomorrow. We have something at the Roslindale Public Library for those that want to join Mom's Demand. I'm making a shameless plug here. And the month of January is for National Survivor Awareness Week. And we have an event in Saturday, January 27th. So if you want to text READY to 64433, you can get some information on Mom's Demand.
Well done, Lynn. It's nice to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks again for taking my question. Yeah, good luck.
Governor Healy, this isn't really about your job, but I'm really curious what you think. You were a big standout of the basketball team at Harvard University. We just had and you're the first woman governor of Massachusetts. We just had the first woman, well, not the first woman, the second woman, but the first woman of color, president of Harvard University, Claudine Gay, that stepped down. What did you think?
Well, I was disappointed to see her step down. I was disappointed in the process. I was disappointed in the whole way all of this unfolded. And, I also just will say that we've got to realize and recognize the broader context of what's happening here. Several weeks ago, Elise Stefanik convened a hearing, and it was interesting. She called 3 people, all of whom happened to be women, one woman of color, and had them for the hearing. We could talk about the hearing. I think that Claudine Gay and the other presidents have rightly apologized for some of the comments that they made that were very lawyerly in a response, and really missed the moment in terms of where we need to be, because it's absolutely clear we need to denounce genocide and denounce anti-Semitism and denounce Islamophobia, and we need to make sure that students are safe on campus, right? That's one thing, but here's what's happening right now. Elise Stefanik has continued, right? Because this wasn't, there is a systematic effort right now by some on the far right to go after higher education right now. And that's what you see playing out with the calls to defund higher education, to eliminate some of the programming, to eliminate pilot, for example. This is a problem because, we have to be strong about our academic institutions, and to have, the hypocrisy of Elise Stefanik, right, who openly praised a candidate who has praised Hitler. Give me a break. Referred to the January 6th insurrectionists as hostages, someone who's an election denier. The idea that the likes of someone like Elise Stefanik is going to call into question, higher education, or the value of higher education in this country, really galls me. So, that's my comment, and also, a warning in terms of what's happening out there and what's at play.
Do you think she had to go? The performance in Congress coupled with the accusations of plagiarism, do you think she had to go?
Yeah, I think that Claudine Gay addressed those. I thought that the corporation had addressed those. I thought she could continue to lead the university.
877-301-8970. Rama, you're on Boston Public Radio with the Governor of the Commonwealth. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
And hey, thanks. I was listening to the program, I believe, a month or two ago, and when you asked the governor that question about Hanscom expansion, she said the same exact words, if I'm not mistaken. Now, those agencies that are in their process, aren't those agencies our agencies? And why is that process not transparent? Can I go to those meetings? Can you go to those meetings, Jim, Marjorie? Talk about lawyerly political speak. I just wish our governor would please stop dancing.
Well, how about a question? Rather than a speech, how about a question?
What's this person's name?
Yeah,
Rama.
The question is, can I?
Okay, Rama, hey, let me cut to it, Rama.
Let the
okay?
governor respond.
First of all, there is a process. There's a process for comment. There's a process for submission by the various parties. I ask you to familiarize yourself with the MEPA process. No one's trying to hide the ball on anything. The teams that do this work are thoughtful. They're engaged, and nobody's hiding anything. And it does take a little bit of time to do things the right way and to make sure that everybody's heard.
Rama, thank you for the call. Governor, there's some decision was made by your administration, not decision, but announcement about financial aid applications for undocumented students in higher ed. Could you fill people in briefly on what that is, please?
Yeah, you asked about different things we did this year. And, one of the things we did this year, Jim, in-state tuition for students who are undocumented. We've got a lot of kids who may have come to this country when they were 2 or 3 or 4 years old. This is the only country, the only state they've ever known. And they've done everything right. But when they get to, graduate from high school, they find out, wow, I'm not treated like my friends. I can't qualify for in-state tuition. I can't get a driver's license. I can't get financial aid or scholarships come through the state. We just changed all that in the state, and we should be proud of that, okay? We now have driver's licenses for folks who are undocumented, who are contributing in so many different ways to our Commonwealth. We now have in-state tuition available to residents students who are undocumented. And we also now have financial aid through the state available to all students, okay, who are documented, who are undocumented. This is good. Right? Don't we want everybody who's living here, we want to invest in them so they become part of our, our workforce and our economy, and, we're able to further their opportunities. So I'm really pumped about this. The program is available. I'll get you where folks can go, but know that if you are a student right now, you're eligible to go and go online and apply for our MASA program that'll make you, eligible to receive state scholarships, state funding, the same as any other student in the state.
I assume you're looking, and we'll get a web address in the next few minutes from you or one of your colleagues, or where do they go?
It's mass.edu/MASFA, MASFA.
Fair enough.
Governor, what's happening with the migrant crisis? I know some people have been able to get work permits, which is a big deal, but there still is a real emergency here.
There is, and this is one of the things that was happening a little bit, last year, but really, really picked up this year. And it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for me as governor. It's been a challenge for governors around the country. The geopolitical forces that have resulted in unprecedented waves of folks coming across the border from Central and South America, often originating in other places. The folks we see here in Massachusetts who've come, probably 80% have been Haitian. People are fleeing the most desperate of circumstances, and they're doing so at great risk to their lives and their kids, but they're doing it because they are so desperate. I've been trying to manage it as best as I can, and I will say that I am really proud of the people in Massachusetts and the communities who've stepped up. We were able to recently, let me just level set, we've got about 7,500 families right now in what is called emergency shelter. Half of those families are migrant families. We were able to recently, I reached out to the Biden administration. I asked them to send people on the ground here from the Department of Homeland Security to help us complete and expedite work permits, because everybody who's come wants to work. And as of today, we've been able to get about 3,000 work authorizations for people who've come here, which will enable them to work, and that's all they want to do. I continue to call on Congress to pass. I continue to call on Congress to pass President Biden's supplemental budget, which will make some needed changes to the asylum process, provide funding to interior states like Massachusetts and New York and Illinois, who are bearing a lot of the burden right now of migrant arrivals, and make some necessary changes at the border when it comes to the enforcement of fentanyl trafficking and just more resources for support at the border. That needs to happen. And by the way, it is really rich to hear some Republicans in Congress rail against this and look to exploit it right now. You see what's happening out there in the discourse when they are refusing to sign that budget request, which will address this issue.
You know, Governor, you mentioned a minute ago, I don't think it's a surprise, we're fairly critical, Marjorie and I, of the speed with which the legislature addresses critical issues. You obviously have a different kind of relationship. You mentioned undocumented students and in-state tuition. I may be off by one or two. I think roughly half the states had passed that law before we did. We talked the other day about those fentanyl strips. 36 states did it before we did. We talked about revenge porn is in the paper today, is something the legislature is going to take. I believe 48 states have done it, and we still have yet to do it. Are you troubled? We're allegedly the most progressive state in America. Are you troubled by the at least what I'd characterize as the lack of urgency this legislature shows on so many issues?
Yeah, you know, like I say, we got done this year some pretty significant things. The tax cuts, $1 billion in tax cuts, hasn't happened in over 20 years. The historic investments that we made in education, both K through 12 and higher ed, the investments that we made in workforce and childcare, which we're going to build upon in next year's budget. And, you know, things like, there are bills that I've been able to sign that I have long supported, but you know they weren't able to get done, and they got done this year, and I'm proud of that, and I'm grateful to the legislature who was supporting many of these things. No cost calls for people who are incarcerated, the in-state tuition that you mentioned, driver's licenses for those who are undocumented. I mean, these are things that were supported within the legislature. But as governor, I had the opportunity to lend my support and sign it, and make sure we get it done.
But like guns, when Moms Demand Action was here, the gun bill didn't happen because of a childish disagreement about committee jurisdiction on an issue that I know from having talked to you ad nauseum about this as Attorney General is one of the most, gun safety, one of the most important issues to you. How is that serving the public?
Again, I just look at the last year and my role as governor, which has been to support and advocate for legislation, to work with the legislature on legislation. I'm really proud of what has been a series of really great things that we got done. And I'm going to continue, Jim, to work every day. I mean, I bring, and the team does, a lot of energy and intentionality and importantly for residents, urgency around getting things done. And I'm really pleased with what we were able to get done this year. And when I say we, I mean our administration and the legislature, and they deserve credit for that. And then, there are some other things that we're just able to do. I think about clemency, in terms of accomplishments, to be able to, as governor, issue the pardons that I issued early on. I mean, we're able
more
to
than any first-year governor since Dukakis. We've talked about this on the air.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of work, and I'm grateful to the teams in our administration. I'm grateful to the partners in government, across government, including a lot at the local level, and that includes the private sector too. I mean, we are in this together. And when I look back on one of the big wins for the state this year, ARPA-H. We were named by the Biden administration an ARPA-H a hub for the country, and that's going to bring a whole bunch of resources, financial, personnel, and otherwise, that are going to help Massachusetts be the leader in the incubator for all the new new breakthroughs that are going to happen when it comes to medicine and health and the like. And that happened because we basically worked as a team to quarterback an effort with private industry, with investors, with our academic teaching hospitals, with our universities, and with government to submit an application that was recognized, for being fantastic and got us the award. That's a big deal, right? So, we talk a lot about Team Massachusetts and partnership, and I think that's what this year has been about. Everybody's got to contribute from all different sectors, all different realms, and that's how we're going to be able to get things done.
Governor, I look at the text messages and sometimes I miss things while you were doing it, but I don't know if you mentioned the bill you're filing about modernizing the IT system in the state government, because a couple of texters have asked if this means that if there were to be another crisis with vaccinations or anything like there was a few years ago during COVID, they wouldn't have to hire an 18-year-old to come in and figure out the system so they know when to show up at Gillette for their vaccines. So did you talk about the IT system?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not here. She didn't.
No,
Okay.
we great new secretary there in the department who today filed what we call the Future Tech Act. It's a more than $1 billion plan to basically modernize our IT systems. And at the end of the day, IT is the backbone of everything. Every service that we deliver, every interface with residents, with municipalities, with business. And as Massachusetts, we better have the very best technology of all states in the country, right? So much of it was pioneered here, developed here. We have got to be the best. And that's why we filed this bill today. It's a bond bill that enables us to go out and borrow some more money to make the investments that we need to make now to modernize our technology system so that whether it's the next, certainly for the next crisis, but more than that, for everyday use.
RMV, all those places, yep.
Yeah, everyday use. We've got to make sure that it's really top shelf and that there's an ease of use for residents, for our businesses, for municipalities. That's what this is about. And we've actually spent a lot of time, and credit to Secretary Snyder for the time that he and his team have spent. It also means helping out our municipalities, who in this day and age are subject to cybersecurity, issues, right? And cyber attacks. You've had towns and cities held hostage by ransom attacks. We've got to make sure that everybody's shored up, our state agencies as well as our municipalities. And our administration, and credit to Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, who knows a thing or two about municipal government, we've really leaned hard into investing in and partnering with and supporting our municipalities, and that's also reflected in the Future Tech Act. The other thing that we leaned into with this Future Tech Act is making the portal for childcare easier to use.
Great.
Childcare, one of the greatest stressors facing families in the state. We know we have high costs for childcare. We're working on lowering the costs of access to childcare through our budget last year and the one that we're going to file. And we want to better operationalize that, make it easier to use, make it easier for people to access childcare and navigate, including financial assistance for childcare. And we're going to do that through this Future Tech Act.
We have Lorraine at the Boston Public Library microphone. Is she still there?
The other thing I'd say about that, because we're sitting here in the heart of everything, AI. AI obviously is a game changer. We want to be a state that leads when it comes to the application of AI and how we can use AI in a way that's constructive and useful to make life better for folks.
Well, Lorraine is getting to the mic. Anna, you're in Rockport. You're on with Governor Maura Healey. Welcome.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me on today.
Sure.
I wanted to ask the governor if she had a chance to read the articles in the Boston Globe by Liz Kowalczyk about the abuse and mistreatment of people with autism and intellectual and developmental disabilities, and what she intends as governor to do about that. My son was abused in a group home in 2017, and since then I have testified at the state legislature, met with Governor Healey's office when she was Attorney General, worked on getting legislation passed, but yet the numbers of abuse keep going up and up every year. And so it's really a tragedy in Massachusetts. It's a state shame that this is happening. And I just want to ask the governor what she intends to do about this.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the call. I certainly did read the articles, and just more generally, I've spent a lot of time with families on this, as well as with folks within our health and human services agencies. And there are many agencies that touch this. I want to say at the outset, my heart goes out to you and to so many families, parents, caregivers, who are struggling with this and dealing with this. And as a state, we have to do everything that we can to make sure that the right resources are in place. As Anna knows, as most people know, we have a real workforce issue, workforce shortages. So how do we, do things like get people through programs, including, making sure community college was free, so that we have more of a workforce there? How do we recruit people in? We have to pay people more. I mean, that's why we increased the rates in the last budget, and we'll look to build on that, because we need people in these spaces. And certainly, and I can say as governor, and certainly given my prior experience, anyone who abuses anyone in a state facility will be held accountable and will be investigated. But I think that your lived experience, Anna, is always what should drive the work and the policy decisions of government, including all of our agencies. And so, I'd like to make sure that we follow up with you, Anna, directly so we can hear more about what happened to your son. And I'm very sorry for the abuse he was subjected to.
Anna, so are we. Don't go away.
Stay
Take
on
your
the phone.
information. Speaking of, did you read? Have you read the piece in the New York Times essentially outing Taylor Swift? Did you read this thing by Anna Marks? Have you heard about it?
I didn't read it. I read about it.
What do you think about it?
I think it's silly. I think it's stupid. I don't know. I don't know why people write this kind of stuff. I love Taylor Swift, by the way. I mean, honestly, she's just unbelievable.
Didn't really out Taylor Swift. It
attempted
debated
to.
whether or not she was straight or gay, and I thought it was odd that the New York Times published it, frankly.
I thought it was
Yeah,
pretty irresponsible.
I thought there's a lot of stuff to write about.
Yeah.
But what a... she really is something, and I...
Did you see her? You
I
didn't
got to
see
see
her.
her. No, I got to see her this summer, and what a performer, and what a lyricist. Like Bruce Springsteen wrote about her the other day, commented about like what an incredible lyricist she is.
Yeah.
And, and how she's lasted, and very intergenerational. And there are a number of artists that we could talk about right now. You raised Taylor Swift, so I just had to say something about.
Who else can we talk about
that.
right now? Lighten the conversation. Uplift us. Who else do you want to talk?
This is good.
Okay, fine.
We got Lorraine.
Did
there.
Boston Calling come out yet? Have
Yeah,
they
it
announced
came
their?
out. I'll tell you in a second. It's in the Globe. We'll tell you.
But meanwhile, we'll talk to Lorraine
Hi,
because
Lorraine.
we called her over to the microphone. So go ahead, Lorraine.
Okay,
What's your question?
The
Lorraine.
Boston Calling lineup is great. It's May, right? It's Memorial Day.
I don't know what the hell it is. We're going to check right now.
Jim,
Oh, it is. Okay,
Memorial
sorry.
Day.
Excuse me.
Okay, it's
Fine.
great. Boston Calling, great
Okay.
lineup this year.
Lorraine, thank you for your patience. Hi.
Hi. And Governor Healy, I so appreciate your leadership. I have 2 sentences. We have owned a HOP home, Housing Opportunity Program, for 31 years, but cannot sell it for enough to make a lateral move into something smaller now that we're retired. We are both almost 80 years old and want our lovely home to go to a younger family, but can't do that because of the resale cap. Can you help us?
Yeah, let's talk more about that, Lorraine, and the specific program. But more generally speaking, I think, Lorraine, this is what I was trying to talk to people about, earlier on in the program. It's like we've got 351 cities and towns in this great state. Our destiny as a state within each and every one of those cities and towns is truly tied to one another. And that's why I'm asking people to get behind and support the Affordable Homes Act. Support that law, which will enable us to make the investments we need to make more housing for seniors who want to downsize, for first-time homeowners, home buyers who want to own a home, for renters who are desperately looking to buy a home. We just need to get that done. And yes, I am asking people to make changes when it comes to zoning practices, when it comes to different policy practices. But if we don't do this, we're going to suffer collectively as a state. And we shouldn't suffer as a state. There's a way through this. There's a way out of this. And there's a way that we can help people like you and others across the state. And I just, this. I bet everybody listening, at some point is feeling, directly through their family or people they know, the real pain points associated with housing costs in this state. And we got to do everything we can to make housing more available to a range of folks around this entire state. It is a problem and something that we collectively need to really take up.
Thank you so much. By the way, we only have a minute.
But stay here, and I'll send somebody over to talk to you about your program. Okay?
Wait a second here.
Boston Calling.
Ed Sheeran.
Yep.
Megan Thee Stallion. Tell the truth. You know who Tyler Childers is?
Yes.
You do not.
Yeah, the country star.
Oh my God.
That's right.
They're very
Governor's
impressive.
very hip.
The Killers, Hosier.
I don't know about that.
And a couple other people there. Someone just texted us and said we don't have the rebate information yet.
Yeah.
Will your office get it to us by 2 and we can say it on the air? Is that doable?
Yeah, rebates could come as soon as this year. They depend on the program. We are right now setting up a clearinghouse to centralize everything for consumers like Kendra who called in earlier, okay? And we'll make sure when we finalize that, we'll get that right over to you for dissemination. I will just say something about the arts. Something that that Kim Driscoll and I have talked about and promoted is our creative economy. We know arts are super important to the fabric of community and to who we are as a state. They're also important economic drivers and engines, and so that's why in our budget we made historic investments in the creative economy. You're going to see more of that in time to come. So, we want more shows, we want more concerts, we want more artists, we want more open studios, we want more gallery showings, we want, more ways to promote arts and culture in this great state of ours. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that and all the creatives out there as we were talking about some shows that are going to come
Leon
up.
Bridges, too, who is fabulous. That's great.
It's going to be good.
Governor, it's a pleasure. Happy New Year. We're really glad to see you. We'll see you next month. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
here.
for having
Maura
me.
Healey.
Yes, thank you very, very
Thanks for
much,
having me.
Governor Healey, for coming in. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. We've been speaking, of course, with the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, and we are very grateful that she takes the time to be with us. Coming up, we're going to talk to John King, CNN's chief national correspondent, involved with two great reporting projects this election cycle. We're going to hear about those up next, but we're also going to hear about what's going to go on in Iowa and New Hampshire. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. Now joined on Zoom by CNN's John King. John, of course, is CNN's chief national correspondent and involved with two great reporting projects this election cycle all over the map and the battleground. John King, good to see you.
Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the blur. It's about to happen.
Well, yeah, it is about to happen. What do you think is going to happen out in Iowa? Give us the latest.
as you know, Marjorie and Jim, we've been doing this a long time. I stay away from predictions. I will tell you that, to me, I look at it this way. Iowa is a week from yesterday. Then New Hampshire comes, a week after that, 8 days after that. We're going to know in 14, 15 days, essentially, we're going to have a very good sense anyway of whether Donald Trump can be slowed or stopped, or whether his hold on the Republican Party will continue. And if that hold continues, we know what that means, right? His Republican Party is based on a lie about 2020. It's based on the idea that the laws and the rules don't apply to him. And so do those roots deepen? They're already pretty deep, but do they continue to get deeper? Or is the Republican Party going to at least have a long debate in the nominating process about not only who it wants to be its leader, but what it wants to be? What are its principles and foundations? Iowa goes first. Can somebody come out of there? All the data tells us Trump's way ahead. Okay, people sometimes surprise us, but assume Trump wins. Does somebody come in a clear enough second place to perhaps get some momentum into New Hampshire to shake things up a little bit? I think that's the defining question. Does somebody emerge to actually give Trump a real challenge?
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, there was a lot of talk in 2020, probably in 2016 too, about how different voting patterns are in urban areas versus rural areas. And Jim and I were talking before the show about the New York Times just did a long story about Iowa and talking about how because jobs have moved away from Iowa, that the state has become more and more rural, more and more isolated. Very few young people that get college educations are coming back to Iowa, and it's made it a much more conservative state. So in some ways, I know the caucuses are first, but how significant are they, given that it is unusual? Well, some of the upper Midwest states are similar, but not as stark as Iowa, at least according to this Times piece.
It's a fascinating question because statewide that is absolutely true. And we know from 2016, the last time we had a contested Republican caucus in Iowa, that the Iowa electorate tends to be a lot more conservative than the New Hampshire electorate that follows. The New Hampshire electorate is more moderate. You have more independents or undeclared voters, as they call them in New Hampshire. So you do have a contrast between the two states. My only add to the New York Times reporting, it's absolutely correct about, and look, Ted Cruz was the candidate. If you look at 2016, Ted Cruz followed by Donald Trump. Trump came in second in Iowa. That was the first time he said an election was stolen from him, by the way. Donald Trump came in second in Iowa to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz won across the top of the state, which is those tiny rural counties, a couple hundred people here, a couple thousand people there, a lot of evangelical voters, a lot of farmers. That should be Donald Trump's strength this time. So that's what we'll watch. The only caveat I would add to that reporting is there are 60,000 new residents in the Des Moines suburbs since 2016. Since the 2016 caucuses. So there has been movement toward the suburbs in Des Moines. The insurance industry has grown there. There's a lot of college communities there. Those are college-educated voters. And we do know that the suburbs are Trump's kryptonite. So just like in New Hampshire, who comes out? Who turns out? Do people in the suburbs turn out? If so, maybe that helps a Nikki Haley. If it's a mostly rural evangelical vote, well, that helps Donald Trump and tests whether Ron DeSantis has really made any significant inroads in the traditional Trump base.
We're talking to John King. I'm laughing, John, not at you. When you started talking about the 60,000 people, this is to Marjorie. When you were watching this guy on election night and he points to a county, do you not expect him to name every person who lives on a particular street? You are really incredible, John King. The knowledge base. I want to stay in Iowa for a minute. I know you don't like doing predictions, so I'll ask you a prediction. Does Ron, 99 counties, I visited them all, DeSantis, drop out if it turns out he comes in a distant second or even a third?
He says no. If he comes in second, I think it would be unlikely. I think then you have the idea that let's give this at least one more try here. I do think whoever comes in third in Iowa, third, fourth, and beyond, there's going to be a lot of pressure. If you are the half of the Republican Party that wants to take it back from Donald Trump, that wants to go back to the party that's actually based on conservative principles, right? Whether you agree or disagree with them at home, those listening and watching, smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation, maybe, a stronger U.S. vision in the world, like maybe supporting Ukraine, for example, as opposed to running away from Ukraine and toward Vladimir Putin at this moment. That half of the party, there's going to be a lot of pressure on anybody who comes in third or lower in Iowa to get out, to give whoever comes in second a clear shot at Trump in New Hampshire. At least can we, that'll be the argument. Can we have one state where somebody gets a clear shot at him? But Jim and Marjorie, you've been doing this a long time. There's this thing called egos in politics. I know that's a shock to everybody listening.
And in radio, by the way, but go ahead.
And so the question is, can you, let's hypothetically, Nikki Haley comes in second in Iowa. We all know she's polling better in New Hampshire right now. So the conversation in the donor community and in the anti-Trump politics community will be, get out of the way, give her a shot. She came in second in Iowa, even if it's a distant second. Governor DeSantis, you were supposed to be the end-all, be-all, the next Trump. You came in third. Please get out. Will he do that? He does have to think about his own future. He's giving his State of the State address in Florida right now. A Ron DeSantis who flames out early is a weaker Ron DeSantis, both as the governor of Florida tomorrow and next month, but as a potential future candidate down the road. So you have to have those conversations. But is Chris Christie going to get out in New Hampshire, where he's polling third right now, and he thinks lightning might strike? Can you convince them, give somebody a shot? I think that argument's a bit stronger because of her stronger polling in New Hampshire if it's Haley who comes in second. That there's a stronger argument to say it's a long shot, but she has the one shot. Let's give it to her. Will that happen? It usually doesn't. Now, we are surprised sometimes by the politicians as well as the voters, so we'll see. But I think that is one of the things to watch out of Iowa. Is somebody does somebody beat Trump? That would be a revolution. Assuming that doesn't happen and Trump wins, is there somebody who is a stronger than expected second, and there's a gap enough between second and third that you can make the argument, please give me a shot?
Well, John King, CNN, as you know, has a new poll that says Nikki Haley's cuts Trump lead to single digits in New Hampshire. But before we get to Nikki Haley, I just wanted to ask you a bit about Ron DeSantis. I remember seeing him, he was getting all this attention for his Don't Say Gay bill and going after Disney World and all this stuff. And I thought he had zero charisma, was a big whiner. I didn't get it. I didn't get the appeal of Ron DeSantis. So I feel vindicated now because he seems to be dropping like lead. But what is the wisdom about what happened to him? Was it just one of these situations where, Florida is not America and he's going back home, or what?
Well, I think part of it, and again, let's let the voters give us the final verdict on this. But as we speak today, he is not going as strong. He is not doing as well as everyone around him anticipated he would. I think one obvious argument is if you have Donald Trump, why would you want Trump light? I mean, Republicans do like Trump. Whether you agree, again, those watching or listening agree or disagree with that, most Republicans do like Trump. But I believe if you had the staff go back and find the tape at the very beginning, or they're digital files now, they're not tapes anymore. But the question I posed when DeSantis got in, the question to me was, is he the next Donald Trump, or is he the next Scott Walker? You'll remember Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, was built up by Fox News as the second coming. Here he comes, this guy from the Midwest, he's going to be the new leader of the party. And once he got out of the Fox ecosystem and had to appeal to all voters, he flamed out. That's what's happening to Ron DeSantis. And will Republicans ever learn that lesson? That if you just keep going to choir practice, sure, I love you, you love me, we're all great. But when you step outside of your comfortable bubble, there are people who maybe don't speak your language or haven't seen you on, Stuart Barney on Fox Business in the morning and, Maria Bartiromo on Fox Sunday Futures or whatever they call it. And they want to get to know you better, and they might not like what you're saying. And so to me, there's a test for the fracturing of the media business, the siloing of the media business. Sometimes hits these candidates in the head like a 2x4 because they have an overinflated opinion of themselves because they have been in the love chamber for too long, and then they step out into the real world, and it's harder.
We're talking to John King from CNN. Can we move to New Hampshire for a second, John? And obviously, a huge part, well, maybe I was going to say a huge part of what happens, well, actually it is true. Huge part of what may happen there may depend, talk about May and May, on what happens in Iowa. At the same time that you show the lead on single digits, Suffolk is showing, the Suffolk poll today has Haley dropping back to roughly 20 points. I assume, again, this is prognostication, but I think it's informed prognostication. She has to worry about going to South Carolina and losing, does she not, in her home state? So I would assume she's got to not only potentially win, which might change everything, but at least have a close second for her to stay in the race and take the risk of losing her home state to Donald Trump. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I mean, she's a former governor now, so it's not like, she'd wake up the next day trying to pass a bill and be, somehow have her political standing diminished. But absolutely. And look, she's also, a relatively young woman who wants to have a future in politics, right? She wants to be the next president of the United States. She wants to be the Republican nominee. But, Jim, that gets back to the point I was making earlier, right? So, the Iowa caucus, I'm looking at my calendar, so I'm looking off camera a little bit here. Look at my calendar. The Iowa caucus is on the 15th, the New Hampshire primary on the 23rd. Then you have Nevada has a two-tiered process, a primary, which Haley might actually win, but no delegates are awarded there. Then they have caucuses. That's on February 6th and February 8th, I'm sorry. And then the South Carolina, it's a Saturday, I believe, the 24th. So by then, so what's that? That's a month and a week from now, right? By then, we're going to know. We're going to know. Either Trump's going to run the board or somebody's going to actually have a shot at him by then. And so if you're Haley and you're from South Carolina, that's why it has to be out of Iowa with momentum, do something stunning in New Hampshire, and then flip the idea so that you get to Nevada and South Carolina, because then you have Super Tuesday. And these candidates have not been campaigning in these states. Trump is essentially the incumbent president to Republicans in these states. And so if you don't prove him vulnerable, I would argue by New Hampshire, but certainly by South Carolina, then forget about it. Just forget about it. The winner-take-all rules in the Republican Party. By the time we get, not far past St. Patrick's Day, this thing could be done.
John, staying with Donald Trump for a second, the federal court, Trump's lawyers argued before the federal court about a president having immunity, and Semaphore is reporting that Trump's lawyer argued that presidential immunity would cover a president ordering political rivals to be assassinated by SEAL Team 6. A hopeful sign in this Suffolk poll in New Hampshire was the issue that mattered the most to the largest plurality of voters. Did I get that right? Yes, was democracy. Is this whole thing that the Democrats have been trying to lay at Trump's doorstep, that he is a great threat to democracy, finally trickling in at least to independent voters? What's that?
I just want to underscore that's kind of bizarre, isn't it?
Any more bizarre than
you could assassinate your political rivals?
Well, he says any crime that a president commits.
SEAL Team 6? I mean, gee, that's a new threshold cross, I think. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. But regardless, do you have a sense that independents, who obviously are pretty critical, are beginning to focus on this risk to democracy thing, or am I being unduly optimistic?
No, I think it's a giant question in the sense that, President Biden and his team think that one of the reasons the Democrats did better in the midterms than anybody thought they were going to do was when he was talking about these issues. There are a lot of Democrats who are nervous, saying the president is invested too much in that being the winning argument, that Donald Trump is a threat to America, essentially. The president doesn't use those words just like that, but that's essentially what he's saying, that he does say he's a threat to the American experiment. He is a threat to the fact that, math matters on election day, that laws matter in your conduct, and you can't blow through things. There are a lot of Democrats who think that it's a risky argument when you're the incumbent president and people, are nervous about inflation or nervous about your age or nervous about other issues. But I do think it's going to be a defining test. I think that New Hampshire is an interesting laboratory, Jim. If you look at it, it's one of the places Donald Trump has never won in a general election.
That's a wonderful point.
It's a competitive state, and it could be a swing state again, because again, Joe Biden is the incumbent, and we have had inflation, and there are a lot of people. I don't mean this critically, but when I travel, you meet a lot of people who are nostalgic for the pre-COVID Trump economy, right? And because President Biden was there at the quote-unquote end of COVID. I know we're having another COVID winter, so I'm not saying this to be slight to anybody who's sick out there, anybody who's nervous out there. I don't mean it that way. I'm talking more politically. But there are people who sort of assign the bad economic stuff of COVID to Biden. Even though the unemployment rate is down, more jobs have been created in the Biden administration than any president in history. Some of that is bouncing back from the depths of COVID. But Biden tends to get the baggage for the economy, and there are some people out there who have these nostalgic memories of the pre-COVID Trump economy, which was a good economy, one he inherited from Barack Obama, a lot of Democrats would say, and maybe made it a little better with his tax cuts or whatever. But there's this weird feeling. I do think New Hampshire, sorry for the ramble, but I think a competitive state that Donald Trump has just barely lost twice, to me, is a great laboratory for these arguments. Because, I can see Trump winning New Hampshire, I can see Trump losing New Hampshire again, and it comes down to the very people you're talking about. Independents, or people who, might normally vote Democrat or normally vote Republican, but are open-minded and available to a good argument.
When you talk about the end of democracy, I always think he should give examples like you just gave about does your vote count, do laws matter? But in this whole debate that we've been having about whether, well, not we, but the country or whoever debates these things have been having about the Supreme Court, the decision about whether or not Trump should be on the ballot or not be on the ballot because he's an insurrectionist. It's almost like we've conceded that the laws don't apply to Donald Trump because we know early on that he was doing violating the emoluments clause in the Constitution, making money from his hotels in all over the place. $7 million is a lowball figure of what he made from these foreign governments. And now you have a lot of people like David Axelrod, for whom I have huge respect, saying it would be a bad thing if the Supreme Court removed Donald Trump from the ballot because of the Constitution and his being an insurrectionist. We should let the voters decide. And some would say, well, he hasn't been convicted of being an insurrectionist yet, even though that didn't apply to Confederate generals, et cetera. I guess the point is, in the case of Donald Trump, it does seem that already our laws, he is above the law. He's been above the law as the president already. So I don't know. I'm rambling myself, John, but you know what I'm saying?
Because I think you're not rambling. You're just, because this is difficult. This is difficult. If you want to make the argument for process, right? Something Donald Trump often throws in the blender, in the trash can. He doesn't believe in process. It doesn't apply to him, right? Like, as in, you thought, maybe you thought you were cheated, so you asked for a recount, then you asked for another recount, then you went to court, and then you went to a higher court, you went to higher court. When you run out, you're done, right? You're done. He exhausted the process over and over and over again in state after state after state after state, and then he says, oh, never mind, they still stole the election from me. You have to respect the process. Ask Al Gore. It's painful, but you have to respect the process. So, our eyes don't lie, right? As I always say, Donald Trump didn't try to steal your car, he tried to steal your country. He lost the election, he lost all his process appeals, he was done, and then he still tried to stay in power. But I get David's point. David has 2 points. One is, in a country of laws, shouldn't a court, a jury or a judge, have to first say you did this?
Yeah.
You were held accountable for it. I get it. I know there are people out there who passionately disagree, that say the chief election officer of Maine, for example, that's her job, and she should be allowed to go through a process and come to that conclusion. I'm not smart enough to know who wins there. David's bigger point, though, is that Trump's grievance arguments keep his people locked in. Whether you agree with that, disagree with that, think that is logical, or think that is nuts, it works for Donald Trump to say, there they go again, they're out to get me, and when they get me, they're going to come for you. It works politically, and that's David's main argument, that it excites his people and gins up his people, and it keeps them, you can't get through, as long as they're in the fight, it's very hard to sit them down and have a calm, dispassionate conversation about, well, the election really wasn't stolen. Mike Pence did not have the authority to do what Donald Trump wanted him to do. You can't have these conversations, and they're never going to listen to us. We're in the media, so we are the enemy, because Donald Trump has, he didn't start it, but he has created this environment. We are the enemy. This is only going to happen. I'm more convinced of this from my work. It's a 20 or 25-year thing. It's only going to happen when husbands and wives and neighbors and doctors and lawyers and coworkers, start having these conversations and start talking people down from the rabbit hole things that they believe. Good, hardworking, wonderful people, by the way, Americans who just believe things that are not true. It's a long, long thing. But Trump thrives on saying, look, I have been convicted of nothing, and they're throwing me off the ballot. It works for him politically. I think that's David's bigger point.
I just got a text from a friend, and I think in the spirit of fairness, I have to mention this. This friend said to me, Marjorie is so right. You just asked John King a question about Donald Trump's lawyer arguing that he's immune from prosecution if he ordered the assassination of all of his rivals, as if you were asking John King, so what's his position on Social Security? So I will not defend myself. I'm embarrassed to every corpuscle in my body. But think about it.
Well, I thought that was a little extreme.
I was going to say, I've gotten to the point where I have John King spending time with us, and I'm talking about assassination of political rivals like it's another topic in a presidential campaign. I mean, it's just...
Well, that's the same thing with the Supreme Court. It's like, it would tear the country apart, as you just said, and as Axelrod has said, and it's a great point, but it's sort of sad that it's kind of like we're saying, okay, well, we can't apply these usual laws or these usual decisions
principles and
principles.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a Star Trek fan, right? That I just lost a whole lot of people out there like, oh my God, John Trekkie. But I've said this before. This is another example of Donald Trump taking us where like no man or no campaign before. I mean, it's just here we go.
Oh, sorry, John, I thought you were like you're mid-sentence. Okay, before you go, you started this by saying you don't like to make predictions. So
we have a good one.
Final prediction.
Yeah.
Is Bill Belichick gone or is he not gone? This is, by the way, for new fans of the show, John happens to be a Boston kid from Dorchester. So this is not an arm's length kind of question. What's the answer, John King?
You know, I have to be on TV later, which is why I'm so casual in my office right now. I hate putting a tie and makeup on and all that. So this is it. I'm available. This is my application for the job.
John just put his hood up if you're not watching.
For those on the radio, this is my hood. I'm ready to be the new hoodie. You know, look, the guy gave us 6 Super Bowl titles. He's a legend. He's an icon. He's the greatest coach in NFL history. I do think, you know, there's a conversation to be had about, is it time to move on despite that amazing legacy? Not my decision. I hope how he and Mr. Kraft talk it through, and I hope they do it in a dignified, classy way, and it's not ugly, because whatever you think about him, he deserves our respect and our admiration for what he has given us in the rearview mirror. You could make a pretty good argument that it's time for a cultural reboot, looking in the front mirror, but I live in Washington, D.C. You know, I'm one of those idiots in Washington. So my blood is still Dorchester, but I love the guy. You have these Brady conversations with me, and I love the guy. We owe him a lot. When we were kids, the Patriots were not so great, remember?
I do. Very well.
So
we owe the guy a lot, and I hope whatever they decide, they do it well.
Boy, John King is so much better person than you and I are.
He really is, Jim.
That's pretty obvious.
We are very low road here, and John brings us to a higher level every week.
John, the hoodie look is so good. I would suggest you try it out on caucus night on CNN. It's a new thing.
That's my plan B. I either want to coach the Patriots, or I saw on the Globe that they might need some people to help Joe Castig do the Sox game.
That's right.
I am here.
Apple in hand. Hey, John King, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
As always.
We've been speaking with John King, CNN's chief national correspondent, involved with 2 great reporting projects this election cycle, all over the map in the background. And what's great is he has these very respectful conversations with people who kind of think that the moon landing didn't happen, but he's very respectful when they tell him the moon landing didn't happen.
Before you say what's coming next, can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Maura Healey asked us who's coming to Boston Calling. You know, one of our colleagues just told us, remember Kieran Rhodes?
Yes,
who came here with Roger Brown from the Salt Lick Incubator? The great young performer, graduate of Berkeley,
very talented.
Will be performing Friday at Boston Calling. Okay,
up next, the AI ads are already here. Apparently, Taylor Swift was hyping Le Creuset, Jim, that cookware. I'm sure you have a lot of it, and it wasn't really Taylor at all. So we want to know if you're ready to take a crash course in discerning fact from fiction online, because you're going to need it for ads, and you're sure going to need it for the 2024 election. We'll talk about that up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Margery Egan, live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. This is our second mention of Taylor Swift in less than an hour.
Can't get
Taylor
away from her,
Swift,
Jim.
what's that?
Can't escape her.
I know, it's known for many things. Her affinity for Le Creuset cookware among them. But if you don't know, it's this really expensive, what is that called? That Dutch oven, kind of heavy, whatever.
Yeah, they're heavy. They're heavy. Pretty colors.
Okay, so as I said, she's never, well, I didn't say this, she's never actually endorsed the company's products despite a slew of ads on Facebook featuring her face and voice doing exactly that. Just the latest wave of AI scams, actor Tom Hanks, the journalist Gayle King, and YouTube personality Mr. Beast have all had their likeness exploited by AI for advertising, according to the New York Times. Meta, Facebook's parent company, has already said they'll require notice on political ads using AI for the 2024 election. But the technology is obviously getting better. Our ability to discern real from artificial, apparently, at least in my estimation, is not keeping up, not just in consumer ads, which matter, but in political ads, which really, really, really matter. And we want to know what your reaction to this. Does this concern you, or is your attitude is, it is what it is, this is the progress that is being made, and there'll be some fraud along the way, but we got to learn to live with it. 877-301-8970 is the number. So I woke up this morning.
Yes.
I know this doesn't rise to the level of a deceitful AI manipulated ad about, let's say, Joe Biden or Donald Trump or any candidate who's running for higher office. There's this baby animal site I go to sort of lift my spirits in the morning. I get up fairly early.
Really?
Know.
It lifts your spirits?
And I'm watching this. It
What?
does.
It doesn't work.
I'm watching, well, for a minute it does. I'm watching a kid throwing a piece of food that's like a disc up into a tree where a raccoon is sticking its nose out, and the kid throws it 2 times, misses, throws it 3 times, it's like a foot off, and the raccoon reaches out its paw and grabs the food and puts it in his mouth. So this is totally true. And true that I had this reaction. I'm sitting there saying how good that made me feel for a second, and then I said to myself, who the hell knows if this is real or an AI constructed kind of thing? You go from there to Le Creuset being hawked by Taylor Swift when it isn't, and you go to political campaign ads, they're going to be manipulated. People remember a few years ago, the first politically manipulated high-profile ad that I'm aware of, a deep fake, was Nancy Pelosi,
looking drunk,
whose speech they slowed down so that she sadly, credibly looked drunk when she was speaking. I think the threat come 2024 on every front, consumer front, political front, whatever, is really serious. And we want to know,
Jim,
if you share the concern. 877-301-8970.
You're being asked to please name your cute baby animal website.
I'll do it in a second. I think I'll do it in a second. I'm just worried I'm going to be really humiliated if it's something that everybody
cutesy-wootsy little.
It's really a cutesy little animal site.
I think you should come clean.
Well,
on
I'm
the
at least
website.
admitting I look at it. Maybe I'll give
think
you
about it. Meanwhile, we're going to play a little sound of Taylor Swift. This is the scam ad for La Creuset cookware.
Le Creuset.
Is Le Creuset?
Le Creuset.
Le Creuset. Oh,
Yes,
excuse
it
me.
is.
So it's a male cookware
I believe
operation.
it is. That's correct.
Okay. Here is someone who isn't Taylor Swift, but see if you can tell that this is the AI Taylor Swift.
Hey y'all, it's Taylor Swift here. Due to a packaging error, we can't sell 3,000 Le Creuset cookware sets, so I'm giving them away to my loyal fans for free. If you're seeing this ad, you can get a free Le Creuset cookware set today. These will only be given out until the end of the day today, so don't hesitate. Supplies are running out, so get yours while you can. Thank you guys for all your support, and I hope you love your new cookware set.
That sounds a lot like Taylor Swift to me. And while I'm concerned about that, I'm not as concerned as I am about the political things. Back in July, a DeSantis PAC-funded ad actually used an AI facsimile of Trump's voice reading a real Truth Social post. Here's that sound.
I opened up the governor position for Kim Reynolds, and when she fell behind, I endorsed her, did big rallies, and she won. Now she wants to remain neutral. I don't invite her to events.
I don't even know what the point of that was.
That isn't very good.
But it's good enough that if you're just listening.
Let's hear one more. Let's hear Oprah, because people know Oprah's voice really well. Here's one of Oprah Winfrey hawking weight loss pills.
Hi, everybody. I'm Oprah Launches. I want to show this product the most important thing is that the composition is natural and has no contraindications. See more on the website. I recommend it very much.
By the way, you're saying it's not a good facsimile of Trump. Obviously, they can make a perfect facsimile
Well, they're getting
of Trump.
better and better.
And not better and better. Imitators can do it
Yeah.
perfectly. Obviously, machines can. And the same with Biden and the same with all these people. And it is really scary. And I don't think the average person gives a damn, but they should. The number is 877-301-8970. Are you concerned about AI misrepresentation online in any of these kind of contexts that we're talking about here? Or you don't give a damn either, do you?
About the AI?
Are you nervous about it or you don't? You're an it is what it is kind of person, are you not?
Well, I am nervous about it, but I'm not sure it's going to be that much worse than what we already have with people
How can
lying
you say that?
about stuff.
How can you say that? When Donald Trump, it could be either way, but it's unlikely since one of the candidates sort of deals and trades in lies, and the other one, I would argue, does not, whether you like him or not. When Donald Trump puts out an ad 3 nights before the election, having Joe Biden say something horrible that turns off a lot of voters with no chance to respond in timely fashion, how is that not a democracy-altering
Well, because
moment?
I think that they will have time to respond in a timely fashion. I think that there are people going to be on alert for this kind of thing.
What if it's the night before an election, not 3 nights before an election?
Well, where would that be? On people's Facebook page?
All over
Yeah.
the internet. Every single thing you touch, it comes up as a political ad. Why would that?
Here's a much more important question, Jim.
This is going to be about little baby animals.
Well, people
I know
really
it.
want to know why you won't reveal your cute baby animal website, and they point out to me that I don't really want to see you, Jim, before you've been spending hours at your cute baby animal website
I don't spend
every morning.
hours. I spend a few minutes every morning. They are really cute, and you'd like them too.
But here's
by
the
way.
other question:
What's that?
whether you're concerned that AI Jim will be more popular than the real Jim.
877-301-8970 is our phone number. Give us a buzz or a text or some such thing. And by the way,
Are you worried about it?
I'm beyond worried about it. Particularly, I know I should worry about consumers because obviously people's pocketbook matters. If you make a it's who cares if Le Creuset is really expensive. If you get fooled into buying a $300 pot, I'm not that concerned that you get fooled into buying a $300 pot. I'm really concerned about major life decisions, whether they're financial, political, that sort of thing. And while, as we said, Meta has said they're going to require notice of political ad that artificial intelligence is used, it's sort of like those things at the end of those drug commercials where they have the voice sped up to like 300 miles an hour to say the side effects are you may die and you may get cancer, you may whatever. Nobody ever listens to those things. So it's not enough. And I don't know what is enough, but Congress is not going to act, and at least with it in time for this election. And when you have a candidate who, as I say, his whole career has been about deceit, you know that he and his people, the Roger Stones, the Steve Bannons, the Steve Millers, are going to use this stuff because that's what they do.
Our number is 877-301-8970. The question is, how concerned are you about AI, artificial intelligence interfering with political campaigns? Are you worried about getting tricked into buying a dental plan from a fake Tom Hanks? That happened
Do you
too.
have Le Creuset cookware?
I do.
I do too.
Yeah, I have it. It's really heavy. It's really
really
heavy,
heavy,
and
really
you can
expensive.
make really good soup. Yeah.
You know why I bought it?
Why?
Because Taylor Swift sold it to me. It's the only reason I just... Karen and Taunton, sorry to dominate the conversation here. Welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. Hi.
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 I'm just calling in regards to the cookware.
Yeah.
I was online and Facebook had the advertisement from the Joanna and Chip from the HGTV.
Yeah.
They were advertising for the same thing, the same reason as the Taylor Swift. They had just a couple hours to do it, and I almost fell for it. And then I researched it on Google, and it was a scam.
Good for you. But
Wow.
before, I'm so glad you did independent research. But Karen, why does it matter to you whether Taylor Swift likes Le Creuset, even if it was legit?
Well, it wasn't from her. It was from that Joanna and Chip.
Oh, somebody else you respect.
HGTV.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All
Yes.
right.
They were doing it, and then when you came up with the Taylor Swift, and I said, "Oh boy, they've got everybody doing it."
Apparently they do.
Karen, what made you suspicious?
It just when they gave you a time limit, it was like red flags came up.
Yeah,
You know?
okay. You have to do it within the hour or
And
something like
it's
that.
just a matter of hours.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just
Yep.
a matter of hours.
Okay.
Karen, good for you. We're glad you did independent research like everybody should. Thank you so much for your call.
One of the texters says, someone should make an AI of ex-President Trump saying, I lied, the election wasn't stolen, I will destroy democracy. And see how that goes. Maybe they could put that up the night before the election. 877-301-8970 is the number if you want to join us here or text us here. The AI issue is similar, says the texter, to the issue with people claiming to be hacked. I could see Trump claiming something he said was an AI kind of thing.
Well, he's getting ready for people. He's saying the election, the only way he could lose is if the election's rigged. It's a variation. It's a low-tech variation on AI disinformation, no?
Yeah, this is from Pete, one of our FedEx drivers who texts us from time to time. I think this is going to, I think you look at, I mean, I read the text more than you do. You'd be amazed, I think, that people listen to us, and obviously we're not
amazed they listen to us.
Not amazed that they listen to us. Thank God people listen to us. But we're not exactly pro-Trump here, but it's amazing how many texts I get from people who listen to us that buy these things that are like just baloney from already that Trump says, like the person earlier today that talked about how Trump called out tens of thousands of National Guard troops on January 6th.
Yeah.
That wasn't true. And the things that he said about they believe still, even with this, what was it, $750 million that Fox News had to say about lying for the election.
Dominion, yeah.
They still believe that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. So people are in their own bubbles, and they're staying there.
Can I, before we take Lauren, can I ask you a question? Because I respect your opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think the raccoon actually did catch the piece of food or not? Tell the truth.
I don't know.
I mean, it could. It put its little paw out and grabbed the thing, and
They're
then
pretty athletic,
shoved those little
raccoons.
So you think it's true?
You ever been someplace where a raccoon has fallen out of a tree? That's pretty scary.
You know, my younger daughter was in South Korea a couple of years ago, and you know what she went to? I've told you this.
Oh, a raccoon bar.
Raccoon cafe.
A raccoon cafe.
Where, you know, like those cat cafes where the cats, raccoons roam around
I'd be a little
damn...
nervous about that. They got long claws. Lauren in Boston, thank you for calling.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, both of you. Perpetual caller.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, two things. One is quick, kind of pointed at Marjorie's comments, in that when people hear mistruths, maybe in the form of a deep fake, it's pretty hard to unravel that.
I agree.
Yeah.
To begin with. So that's my first concern. And secondly, I'm going to share all of Jim's anxieties about this.
Good.
And there was a program on NPR. I don't remember which program I was listening to because I'm kind of an NPR junkie. It was a gentleman that worked in AI that was I forget his title, I forget who he was, but he was talking about the concerns of AI. And he made this point, which I found really fascinating and quite disturbing. And he said, hey, let's look at Facebook for a second. Years ago, when it came out, what a cute little platform. We connect with our friends and so on and so forth. And fast forward to 2016, it influenced a presidential election of the most powerful country in the world. So here we look at AI, and we already have in its infancy, even though it's not brand new, it's still in its infancy. We already have profound concerns. There's lots of benefits to it, but we have profound concerns, and we don't even know a fraction of the damage it's going to cause us.
Well, I'm glad you called, and I'm glad you share the level of anxiety that I do. And we don't even know enough to understand what creative, skilled at deception people can do. That was a great call, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Janice in Milford says, I'm horrified that people will claim the photographic evidence of January 6th is fake and get away with it. And many people have said that. They have shown the attacks on January 6th, and people don't believe what they've seen there. And as we know, we talked about this the other day, Jim, that 34% of Republicans said the FBI was behind, was like a big setup, just like the government making up, as I mentioned before, people landing on the moon. I don't think 34% of the country believed that the moon landing was faked, but 34% of Republicans apparently believed that the FBI was behind. They were masquerading as people that were mad and were FBI agents in disguise.
Your point is we're doomed even without AI.
Well,
is that your point?
I think this. It's much worse. I mean, we have had these kinds of things where people believe crazy stuff in the United States before, but I think it's much worse now. Jim from Cape Cod, what do you think, Jim?
Hey, Jim.
Hi, guys. I think we've already experienced this. We've had intelligence that the laptop wasn't real. So on both sides, I think there's anxiety about AI, but we're always flooded with misinformation. So I don't think it's anything new. I think we just have to cipher through it.
Yeah, well, when you say just cipher through it, how do you suggest the average busy person who doesn't think when it comes to Le Creuset, like that woman a minute ago, should do an independent Google search? I'm serious. What is the average person who, just catches a snippet of something and is not an evil soul, but is a busy soul? I'm not challenging you, by the way. I'm just asking you. What does one do?
I don't think we have answers, but how do you cipher through any intelligence, not only artificial? There's just so much misinformation out there.
Well, I would argue that the fact that what it was, citing another number from that poll, that 30-some% was it Republicans? No, of all Americans think that Joe Biden was not the duly elected president of the United States, suggests that a significant chunk of us don't have the ability to cipher through anything already, even before the advent of AI.
I think it's a bipartisan issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I hear you, and I'm not suggesting that some Democrats don't do it. I'm just suggesting this is deceit and disinformation is Donald Trump's stock and trade. Jim, thanks for the call.
Michelle in Acton wants me to tell you, Jim, that the raccoon most likely did catch the food.
Oh, good. Why?
Because they come and knock on her kitchen door at least once a week to ask her for peanuts.
No, but the question, Michelle, text back, can the raccoons catch? Is the question. The raccoon, you know what the raccoon did?
Stuck his paw out.
The thing
stuck. I think it's totally believable.
It hit the tree, and he slammed, I don't know if it's a he, the raccoon slammed its paw against the tree to trap the piece of food.
Well, we'll have to ask Simon Montgomery. But every week she tells us that these animals do things I had no idea that they could do. I mean, they're asking Alexa to turn on the rock and roll, whatever they're doing in the kitchens. Those are the parrots. Remember we talked about that a couple of weeks ago? I mean, she tells us unbelievable things about the emotional lives of an octopus, for goodness sakes. Everton from Taunton, thank you for calling.
You have 1 minute, Everton.
Oh, sorry,
Thanks for the
we're
call.
almost at the end of the show.
Hi.
It's all right, I'll be quick. Hi, guys. My concern is when somebody starts using these fake voices to make someone say something that now becomes, it gets used in a court, like in a divorce dispute or whatever, or even to get someone in trouble with the law by pretending to have recorded the person saying something that they didn't really say.
That's another, I mean, we could spend the whole day coming up with situations in which fakery, disinformation can screw people, and that's just another one. Thanks, Everton. Thank you. An anonymous texter says, make an AI of Trump eating a salad. We would know that was not true. You wouldn't have to research that to know that that was not the case.
Yeah, we had another one. We want to know when we're going to get back to our greatest hits, Jim.
What is it?
Wearing socks to bed, dimpled male buttocks, fake trees versus real trees.
Well, we'll do that again, but I was really concerned about the AI thing, so I wanted to get it out of my system.
Yeah, I think we have to wait till next Christmas for the fake trees versus real trees kind of thing. I think we're not going to talk about that for another 12 months, so I'm sorry to disappoint anybody.
It's her opinion.
And I don't remember, what were we talking about? Why did we talk about dimpled male buttocks? Do you remember that?
Yeah, we actually did talk about
dimples. I must have blocked that one out.
Well, apparently you did.
Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Again. We have a podcast. It is called Boston Public Radio.
Wow.
We have two versions, a 3-hour one and a half-hour one with the highlights, which is, I think, is the better one. That's just me. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by our medical ethicist, Art Kaplan, our national security expert, Juliet Kayyem, our media maven, Sue O'Connell, MIT economist, John Gruber, and former GBHer turned podcast
wait.
extraordinaire at the Washington Post. She is really
Did
talented.
you listen to her podcast?
I'm going to listen to
It's
it tonight.
fabulous.
Christina Quinn. We're so
Quinn.
thrilled.
It's great.
Good for her. She's going to join us tomorrow as well. Our crew, we'd like to thank them: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Claw Parker, and our executive producer Jay Bologna, who is locked in the men's room.
Not today. He wasn't locked in the men's room today.
For 4 hours last
He
week.
got out. It's not that big a deal.
He got out. Special thanks to the BPL team, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Jeff Fashon, and Maddie Geyer. I am Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. Meanwhile, have a great afternoon.